Welcome to the ZBA meeting of July 19th, 2018. Excuse me. Tonight we'll have 8 applicants. We do have a little change of the agenda. The 8th applicant we're going to put up first, and the first applicant we're going to put back there that has been here before. So we're going to jump right into the town of Scituate, which is the South River. Yeah.
Town of Scituate, 600 Chief Justice Cushing Highway in Scituate. Request a special permit in accordance with Scituate zoning bylaw, section 460.2, for the maintenance, dredging by mechanical methods of an estimated 30,250 cubic yards of sediment from the 3 existing or authorized navigation channels located within the South River, north of Marshfield Avenue, Scituate Bridge. All dredge sediments will be disposed offshore at the Massachusetts Bay disposal site.
Thank you. You guys just want to introduce yourself and then maybe give us a brief overview of what you guys are doing?
Sure. I'm Michael Count from Full CLE Engineering here on behalf of the town of Scituate. Sitting in for my colleague, Christine Player, has been doing a lot of work on this project, but I did the conditional hydrographic survey out there a few years back, and familiar with the area quite a bit. So also here with.
Hi, I'm Nancy Durfee. I'm the Coastal Resource Officer for the town of Scituate and part of the team that's working on this project. Steve Moen, the Harbor Master, is also part of the team from Scituate, and we also share this responsibility with the town of Marshfield, and I'll let
Good evening, Mike DeMeo, Marshall Harbor Master, also the Scituate Shellfish Warden, and also a Scituate Town resident. Thank you.
All right, so you just want to tell us a little bit about the project?
Absolutely.
Maybe a little background, if it's similar to the one that we saw, was it 3 years ago? Or?
It would have been longer than that.
Okay, we had saw one here before. So.
I'm going to let Mike go ahead and talk a little bit about the project.
Yep. So essentially it's a maintenance dredging project of the South River. There's 3 different areas as you work your way from north to south, starting at Area A, and then once you get into the windier channel, Area B and Area C. Each area has about 10,000 cubic yards. This material has been approved to go offshore by the Army Corps for offshore disposal. From the recent storms this past March, it's kind of accelerated the accretion in the area, so it's really become a public, navigation and safety issue in these specific areas. So, so far we have approvals through the Scituate Conservation Commission, the Marshfield Conservation Commission, the Marshfield ZBA, the Army Corps approval to go offshore. We're requesting a special permit through the Scituate ZBA because the site is located in the Tidelands Conservation District. Kind of brings us in front of you. And
so everyone else has said yes, but if we say no, it's dead, right?
And then we're just waiting on DEP and the Army Corps to draft up their dredging permits. So we are looking to have everything in line to dredge this coming fall and get that squared away.
And how long is the project expected to take?
Usually, a couple months. There's a dredging window that they assign based on, fish habitat and spawning. So it's usually, you have a 3-month window to dredge, and then after that, you try and wrap things up by then.
We're also most likely going to have to phase the project in due to funding as well. So we would be looking to begin Section A first, which is right at the confluence, and that's at the farthermost tip on the map that you see in front of you. That is where some of the most hazardous conditions are, so we would be looking to get that out first, and then if we had enough money to come around into the Section B, and then looking forward to doing, more B and C as funding becomes available.
We could be looking tonight to have approved all 3 sections so that you don't have to come back as funding comes out, so it's done in the future. It might be year 2 or year 3 down the road.
Exactly. Thanks.
Any questions?
Just as it relates to the 3 sections, so is it a possibility that one section would be done this year and then the next section maybe another year? Or?
Because of the hazardous conditions in the Section A, we would like to get that done this fall. Again, mentioning that we have a small window of opportunity due to time of year restrictions, due to species and other things, plus weather conditions, and it is a very treacherous area to dredge in. There's been difficulties in the past, so we'd really wanted to get that into the fall before we rushed into winter and time of year restrictions. So, and then come back, and then continue the process as funding becomes available to us.
Like, if you could just turn the map, maybe just so the audience can want to take a look at it, too. Great, thanks. And the funding, where's that coming from? I know it's jointly.
Yes, so funding has become extremely tight. We used to have more sources of funding for dredge projects. The town of Scituate has secured some funding through Waterways, and I think Marshfield has a small amount, and we would be looking to enhance that with a grant. There is possibly some money coming available, and we would be looking for that to improve our funding to make it happen.
What sort of volume are we looking at here in terms of removal?
So there's roughly 30,000 cubic yards in the entirety of the project, and probably 10 in Section A, which would be that first section that we would be going after. But again, we would be looking at all of it, which would be 30,000 cubic yards.
And most of it, again, would be loaded onto barge, then tugged out, brought back, load up the barge again, tug it out, and
Right.
dump it. And they must have a specific area that they allow you to dump it, or?
Right, so it would go to Mass Bay's disposal site, which is off the coastline. It would be mechanically dredged, just because of the type of material that is inherent to this area. We've tried hydraulic dredge in the past, and that's been unsuccessful and treacherous. So we would be looking for someone who is experienced and has a mechanical dredge equipment.
Any other questions?
Mechanical dredge and the offshore disposal is consistent with what was done in Scituate Harbor the last time it went through. I'm guessing it was 10 years ago?
Yes. Or
approximately.
maybe even more,
Maybe
yes.
more. Time flies when you have
It does,
fun,
it's
you know.
probably due to be done again.
But again, it's something a method that's been used successfully.
So when you say you're looking, so a contractor hasn't been chosen yet?
Until we finalize the permits and
Right.
secure funding,
Too early.
it's too early.
I got you.
We will, as soon as we have permits, and we know we're getting close to a final permit and funding, we'll be searching out for a contractor to make sure that we're ready when it all comes into place.
That must be a fun process, given that we have 2 towns involved.
It's absolutely it's been wonderful, because we work well together.
Well, that's good, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
It's actually been, even with the town, both ways working together, since the project's been vacant for a little while, so Marshall paying 25%, Scituate paying 25%, and hopefully State pays 50%. It's no different than we dredged 3 years ago, Seafleet Bridge to the yacht club. It was 50-50 split with Marshall and Scituate as well, so the process is in place.
That's
great.
And also, both town administrators are well in tune to this project. There's been a few meetings with both harbor masters, with Nancy, and 2 town administrators, so it's nothing that's coming new. Everybody's involved in it, and the money streams are there, and, it's a cost share for everybody,
Are there any questions in the audience? Yes. Just state your name and address,
My name
please.
is Lisa Gase at 242 Central Ave in Hummerock, and I ask that you please don't issue a permit for this based on the material going offshore. Hummerock Beach is seriously in need of nourishment, and even the 30,000 cubic yards for the total project going back on the beach where this material came from is desperately needed. To take that material away and dump it offshore when there's so many challenges and so many people's homes in need of protection.
I think some of the issues is that they would be able to get permits to dump it back on shore, if I'm
They
right.
could go at the bottom of
Well, I'll let her.
Fourth Cliff, where it's gone before, where they've been putting material year after year after year.
So we looked at a variety of different alternatives for the placement of the material as a beneficial reuse as part of this project, mainly because it's the best thing that you can do if you do have material. We looked at North Hummerock, and we looked at Fourth Cliff. We looked at North Scituate because we do have a permit there to do beach nourishment, so it would have been a fairly much easier. We looked at storing it on land. We looked at a number of other different alternatives, and we could not get easements on the properties along Central Ave, which would have afforded us the closest location. And then we did try to reach an agreement with Fourth Cliff, but it is an Air Force base-owned property, and to get an agreement with Air Force would have taken me too many years to actually realize, so that ended up not being a viable source. The one location that was just mentioned is too small. We have 30,000 cubic yards, and we can't put 30,000 cubic yards on one small property.
But now that you're breaking it up into only doing one, there's more than enough room. I have photos of how this material went from the bottom of Fourth Cliff right up 5 houses, right towards the mouth. They actually built a road with all this material. And only doing the dredge in one phase, there's more than enough room there. And then when the tides come in, everybody benefits from the material, and it all washes southerly, and everybody gets a little piece of it, and every little bit helps. The challenge that Nancy ran into with the easements was that she tied in an easement for the dredging with an easement for beach nourishment, and that project wasn't completely engineered, and people weren't willing to sign over their property rights until that project was engineered, and it wasn't completed. And so I had asked her, if you could just do a separate easement for the dredging, everybody would sign that. That wouldn't be a problem. But to ask somebody to turn over private property rights to a project that hasn't been completed is unreasonable and unfair.
The town created an easement that included the dredge material and beach nourishment that was approved by the Board of Selectmen. We had all anticipated doing that and having that project be combined as one, as it makes the most sense if you're doing a project to use what you have already. Because of the hazardous conditions and the encouragement by both harbor masters and the Waterways Committee, and it was actually the Waterways Committee that brought it to the attention of the Board of Selectmen, I was asked to move on the project to make sure that we had our permits and were able to dredge as soon as possible. I offered the residents a window of opportunity, if they were comfortable with the easement, to sign the easement, and we could move forward with providing the dredge material. And if I was able to get a long enough contiguous stretch of homeowners who were willing to sign the easement, I would have continued to keep them in the project scope. But because I only had so few numbers and they were not contiguous, I was not able to do that.
Rich Feely, 286 Central Ave. I have a copy of the minutes from Conservation dated February 5th. Can I read a segment?
Sure, as long as it's not too long.
Okay. Mr. Harding saw Nancy Durfee last week. Finally have the approvals to move forward with the dredging in cooperation with Marshfield. We'll be going off the beach and will not need permission of the owners. will be going for the permits in the next few months. I'll jump ahead. Going off the beach, off people's properties. So I question that there's a good faith effort on this town to try to get that material back on our beach. And they're using the dredge material as a strong arm tactic to get us to sign the beach rights over. And that's just unfair. And I'm asking this board, who protects this town, how would you feel if a contractor came in here and said, we're going to take 30,000 cubic yards of Scituate material and truck it somewhere else? I think your committee would have an issue with that. That's what you're allowing them to do, to take 30,000 cubic yards of Scituate soil and drop it in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, 12 miles off the shore of Salem. That's just untenable to me, that this town would actually want to do such a thing. And I'm asking for this board to show some backbone and tell them you're in charge of looking after flooding of properties. I read your whole thing about what you're in charge of. And part of that is public safety, from flooding, all kinds of aspects. Well, your decision in favor of the citizens of North Town Rock would go a long way to protecting the people of Scituate. Thank you.
The conversation that I had with Mr. Richard Harding, who sits on the Conservation Commission, he misunderstood. When I said I was going to have to take it offshore, I didn't mean near shore, I meant offshore, and that would be the Mass Bay site. And though Richard and I have talked afterwards, the conversation was already had in front of the Conservation Commission and with the town, but the conversation did not lead to me having a misunderstanding. It was just a misunderstanding of the interpretation of the words that I used that day.
Then that should have been corrected in the minutes of the following meeting.
Excuse me, hold on just a minute. Any other questions?
Yes, I'll go back just a little bit.
Just your name and address, please.
My name is Keith Crowley, 128 Central Avenue. And to begin with, my position is it's a travesty for this material to go offshore, taken out of the Humrock sediment system. It just shouldn't be allowed to happen. Your board should tell them that they have to go back and look at the alternatives again. There are alternatives. A couple of things have been said here. One is that the material can't be hydraulically dredged. I'm old enough that I was there in the 50s when it was dredged. They used a big enough dredge. The dredges they brought in recent years were toys compared to what needs to be done. They didn't have a good specification for the size of dredge. If you get something like Great Lakes dredging, and they dredge that hydraulically in a minute. The other thing is, there are places where it can go. There's, behind the basketball courts, for instance, there's a quite large area of dredged material that's already stored there. It could be stored on top of that material, and it could be sold to residents. Residents would buy it if they didn't have to give up their rights to their property to have it on their property. You could sell that material and make a profit. It's got to be cheaper than hauling it all the way to Wellfleet. There's got to be a solution that's cheaper than that and better for the environment and better for Humrock residents if it really needs to be done.
I'm going to have Mike speak to the hydraulic portion of this, because he was more familiar with that project at the time when the hydraulic dredge flipped.
So the mouth of the
You're just going to respond to the question.
so the confluence of the North and South Rivers was dredged in 2006 hydraulically, in which the barge flipped over. It's no different than in Green Harbor. We dredge every year with the Caratok hydraulic vessel. That's become ineffective as well because of the amount of cobbles and sand. It's mostly a lot bigger cobbles more than sand that you're actually dredging. We dredged the South River from the C Street Bridge to the Yacht Club. In 2015, we tried to hydraulically pump it to Rexham Beach. Some parts were good, some parts were not so good. We had about 4,000 cubic yards pumped over 2 miles, which was a lot of work, and 7,000 cubic yards still remain there. And the equipment was ineffective, it kept clogging the impellers and things like that. And I will say, if you look at the map, half of this material is in Marshfield waters. The Marshall Zoning Board did not have any issues with the material going offshore. Even to this day, Wrexham Beach is a permanent location for dredge spoils, and it's not going to Marshall either. It's not really cost effective to truck it. The more times you handle the material, the more it costs. I think both towns are having a hard time affording seawalls at this point. Dredging is no different. Beach nourishment is an ongoing thing, it's not a one-time fix. And I know Nancy is working on a CZM grant for beach nourishment for for Humrock Beach, which will far exceed 30,000 cubic yards.
Can I respond to that?
I'm going to get the person behind you first.
Yes, concerning the...
Just your name and address.
Bob Gracie, 180 Central Avenue, Humrock. I understand one of the reasons this didn't take place and dumped on Humrock was because they couldn't get enough signatures on the temporary easement. And the way that was written, they put the temporary easement for the dredged material on with the cobble dune, on with the raised road, on with the permission to go on private property to dump the cobble on. People had to be confused by that. That should have been on a separate sheet altogether. And this board probably has the ability to postpone this whole thing until the town can get papers out to everybody to give them the opportunity once again to sign. The other thing is that even if you don't have the signatures, they could have put that, they can put that down below just below the low water line. And they don't have to get any signatures. Now, they said, well, 30,000 yards is not really a lot. Well, it is a lot, because there's enough in 30,000 cubic yards to put over 300 yards on every lot all the way down to Barrett Street from the split. So once again, we're at, oh, we gotta help Humrock, we gotta help Humrock. But when push comes to shove, we end up losing it. It's not right.
I just have a couple of questions. First, I'm by no means an expert, but dumping dredge materials below the water line, you might not need the same signatures you needed to dump it above, but there's certainly approvals that are still needed. So it's not that there wouldn't be formalities in going that route. I do have a question. It seems that some of the citizens are alleging, for lack of a better term, that there was a little bit of pork barreling going on with the easement. Can you just speak to that for a second? I want to better understand the town's position on that. It sounds like, and please excuse my ignorance on this, that the citizens were looking to have the materials that come out of the river go to reinforce the beach, and the town recognized that we needed some easements in order to gain access over private property to do that. Was an easement put in front of the citizens that provided the town those rights and other rights?
I'm not exactly sure with the term that you use.
It sounds like they're alleging that the town said, give us these rights so we can reinforce your beaches with the dredge materials, but also in the same document, give us these other rights. That's what I'm seeing a lot of nods out there. That's what they're alleging the town did. That the town asked, give us these rights over your property so we can help you, but also give us these other rights so we can gain some other rights in your property. And I'm not even saying that that's necessarily wrong, because I don't understand it. I'd just like to understand from the town if that's what happened.
So the easement was combined with the two projects. So it had South River, the dredge, compatible dredge material, as well as other types of material, as well as to be able to access it for the project itself. It was combined in that way.
And so what's the second project you're referring to? I'm
So
sorry.
there's two projects, the South River Dredge Project with the beneficial reuse of the dredge material, which we had attempted, and also a dune nourishment and a roadway elevation project, because this area is a very vulnerable area, and we recognize that. So through CZM, I received a grant. We did conceptual designs for that project all of last year, and met with the residents with 2 public meetings, showing them first, kind of very conceptual, 10,000, maybe 30,000 foot high, and then came in a little closer, kind of really describing some of the issues that they might have with approach from the road to the home, and also that we had determined that dune would be best over a beach nourishment. There were many questions. We continued the project. I got another grant through CZM to do engineering design for the dune nourishment and the roadway elevation. We do need to do those two together in order to make sure that we're not adversely impacting residents just by elevating the road, or still having back flooding from the river if we just put the dune out in front. So it's a combination of both, but the elevation of the road has nothing to do with, there's no easement required for the elevation of the road, because it's not a public, you don't get a public benefit for the road. It's already part of what we have. So it's required for the dune nourishment, and it's required for beach nourishment, and it's required to have the material put out in front of the homes if you dredge. So those things were included, so that if the town should get all of those things then they would have all of those opportunities. That happened in August last year, where I brought it to the Board of Selectmen. They voted on a final easement. I then had a public meeting, provided the language to the residents in August. In December, I was called to a Board of Selectmen meeting because the Waterways Committee was concerned about the issue of the hazardous conditions in the rivers. And so I was then charged with moving the project forward. And in order to do that, I also had to talk to the residents, because I had already talked to them about using the dredge material on their beach. So I provided them with a letter, and I stated what the issues were, and gave them an opportunity to sign the easement, and said that they would not lose an opportunity to have the other project move forward, but we did, as a community, had to move the South River Dredge project forward because of the conditions, as I had been charged. So that's how it has become as complicated as it is. We recently just had another public meeting where the residents were visibly upset, as they are tonight, and I understand their concerns. I do. And the Board of Selectmen are going back and taking a look at the easement to see if something can be done in order to make some improvements and formulate an easement that might be more palatable. But at this time, that's not been completed. I'm still in the process of two very large projects that have become extremely complicated and very difficult, frankly.
So just moving forward, just to clarify, so we really, we're kind of, although this is 30,000
Exactly, yep,
feet, we're really talking about 10 at this phase of the project.
right.
So has that time passed that, at this point, that you go back and get easements and change things around, or is there no time for that to move forward this? I know, you know, even going forward into phase 2 and 3, that there might be time to work something out. Is there time?
The permit moved forward. So we took the permit and we made the consideration. We've laid it out in all of the permitting. The notice of intent went to the to the Conservation Commission. They reviewed it. They provided us with the order of conditions. So there was a layout in the notice of intent, and I can provide that to the ZBA, of how and what we did in order to ensure that we were doing everything we possibly could to use the material. In the end, it's still cost prohibitive. Even if we were to do it, it would cost less money to actually buy the material and put it on the beach than to take it, put it on a barge, and barge it up the river, take it off the barge, and then truck it down and dewater and put it on the beach. But we were willing to do that because, of course, material is very, very important. The other portion is I was contacted by Rebecca Haney after we had completed the survey of the material in the river and the material on the beach. She's a coastal geologist, and she understands how an engineered dune would work. And she laid out to me and showed me clearly from the sampling that there were too many samples that were too fine in order to be effective on this beach. The materials in the river just don't fully match. There are some areas that do, but there's still
Not to cut you off, but we'd be spending the same amount of money for materials that weren't exactly the right materials for the job we were trying to accomplish.
Exactly.
That makes sense. I appreciate the explanation and answer to my question.
Okay. Thank you.
And I guess just one more, I'm sorry.
No, it's
Am I
okay.
right to think that if at this point, even if it was for Phase B or C, if we were going to start to put the materials onto Hummerock, that might involve going back to Marshfield and redoing some of what we've already done?
Yeah. Oh, we'd have to go to all,
Re-permitted, yeah.
the whole
Right.
thing would have to be re-permitted at this point.
And how far, it sounds like the conditions navigating from the north, south along the river are already dangerous. How far are they from dire, I guess, for lack of a better term?
So, I believe it was dire before the March storm. In March, and I can tell, and I can show you the imagery from the January storm, we did a drone overfly over that area, and then I had pictures directly after the storm that revealed the water main that had broke off the end of Fourth Cliff. I roughly estimate 10 foot of material off the north end of Fourth Cliff is now in the river, most likely in Area A. And we had talked to Army Corps in hopes that maybe when they were here for the FEMA site visit, that maybe they may be able to assist us with that. But it's not an Army Corps, it's not a channel that they would have to be any requirement to. So it is solely on the towns to ensure that this becomes a safe, navigable area. As you know, this has been a tricky spot for many boaters. They do like to go out to the spit, and getting through that spot can be tricky if you don't have the right navigational equipment and know the river. Just sorry. I'm sorry that it's been...
So, in other words, if tonight, if this gets, we lose Marshfield, we lose there, and we lose the dredging, if that's kicked down the road, we don't have that opportunity. But is there a plan in place separately from this, or any thoughts of replenishment of those areas coming up in the future?
For the beach?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the other project that I'm working on, the dune nourishment project that's still very much in play. We are still working with the residents and working with the leadership in the community to try to come up with an easement that is something that can move forward on this project. I have the engineered plans now, and we're ready to roll on the permit. Part of the grant was both for engineered design and preliminary permitting. So those are already drafted. All we have to do is submit, but we can't submit until we have the easements in place.
A few more questions.
To step back a
Just
little.
one more time, just your name.
I'm
and
sorry,
address.
Lisa Case, 242 Central Ave in Hummerock.
Thank you.
When Nancy sent out a letter, just about all of the summer residents were gone. Not everybody gets their mail forwarded from their post office box, especially if it's kind of local mail. And what happened is, it was basically an ultimatum. We had a week and a half to sign, or that was it. It put a tremendous amount of people in an absolute panic, because they're like, wait a minute, you're telling us if we don't sign this easement for the dredging, which then automatically signs you up for the beach nourishment, permanent, for the life of the property, you no longer have a private beach. You pay taxes to the low tide line, but now you're giving a public easement, yet there's no guarantee that the town is going to get funding, but you've given your property away. But it still wasn't completely engineered. Questions that the residents have been asking over and over again were not being answered. Yet all of a sudden, here it is, take it or leave it. There were people that signed the easement believing that the dredging was going to go back on the beach. No one was notified that, oh, by the way, if you'd like to retract your easement, we're not putting that material on the beach. We're going to ship it offshore. There was no communication. There was a lot of deceptive practice, withholding information, misleading, and so many people just think this is just a land grab. we talk about the seriousness of the condition in the river. You might want to see the condition of some of these houses from the storm in March, the 5 back-to-back high tides that has torn people's property away. There's homes on Fourth Cliff that one good storm, they're going to lose their houses into the ocean. So as much as I can feel for the boaters having a safe area, the residents and the homeowners need to have a safe area. And if the town really wanted to, we're looking at a beach nourishment that is 4 feet above your house, above your deck, above your seawall, that will take away any view you have, that any wind that comes in is going to blow sand and cobble right into your house. And residents have numerous questions. How is it going to drain? There's no drainage along the road. The road's going to be elevated. Houses on foundation, the water's going to wash towards the house. There are a tremendous amount of questions that have not been answered, yet, bang, they made the decision, didn't tell the residents that all of a sudden they're going to have this whole different change of plan. Oh well, it was like a punishment. You didn't sign it the way we wanted it. Okay, too bad.
Well, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I recognize a lot of what you're saying, and it would be great if we could take dredging materials out of a navigable waterway and use them to reinforce any area of Scituate that's subject to beach erosion. But it sounds like you're raising some issues and throwing around some pretty negative accusations that at the end of the day say that the town didn't do enough to protect your private property while they were trying to protect some public navigable waters. Hopefully you can understand, it sounds like these commissions and multiple towns and our board is trying to do what we can to protect this private property to the extent that is reasonable, and some might even say we're going above and beyond. I'm not sure I see how the town or these town officers owed you any more than they're given. I think some inland residents of town might say that they already went above and beyond. It seems like we're asking a lot.
What part do you think is asking a lot?
Excuse me.
To communicate?
Excuse me, this is not a debate.
Yeah.
We can make comments, we listen to each other's comments, it's not a debate, and it should be a civil, thoughtful discussion. I think that's my
Okay, 2 more questions.
Rich Steely, 286. I'd just like to say that the town's ingenuous in that they ever really wanted to combine these 2 projects with the material to be used. They already were going forward with this in February. I was at the August 30th meeting. Promises were made by the Board of Selectmen. Nancy Moore. Moore Curran. Promised to rework the wording of the easement to try to satisfy many people that were required to sign it. Nothing was done all winter. I went to the meeting in June, I think it was. She openly admitted she dropped the ball, blamed it on a new town administrator. I heard a bunch of excuses, but I really didn't hear a reason why. And I asked then, and now we're getting closer to the end of July. And I've asked other questions, and I get no answers. So there was never any good faith effort on the town to really try to protect us. There was a willingness on the town to try to force us to sign the full easement. I never saw any easement only for the river project. There was no such easement put forth to anybody. They never offered us that option. They never pursued it. They didn't want to pursue it. They were hoping by strong-arming us, they would get us to sign the beach nourishment easement. And they did. So now we're getting punished, and they're taking the material out to sea.
Well, I don't believe it's punishment. I think it's obviously cheaper for them to take it out to sea.
Do you know
But
that for a fact? Do you actually have documentation?
Excuse
You know
me,
what?
once
You know
again,
what?
this is
We're
not,
gonna
this
debate.
No, I know,
is
but-
not an argumentation is not the way we operate this board.
I'm not trying to argue.
Please stop. Please stop. Don't, when someone makes a comment, don't immediately challenge
Okay,
what they're saying in an argumentative way. It's not how we operate this board. I'm hearing an awful lot of things being said by the residents of Humrock,
It's
and
in
I
the
appreciate the
document.
comments. However, what's before this board is not how the permitting was gone through. What's before this board is purely, will we grant, as required under our bylaw, the special permit that allows the work to be done. The work is only going to be done if it can be funded. It's only going to be done if it's supported by the towns. We have been told that that the towns have supported it, Marshfield and Scituate. Variety of meetings, Conservation Commission, far more qualified to hear your concerns than we are, at least than I am. Selectmen, far more interested, per se, in the sense that they are elected officials of the town and responsible to the citizens of the town. But we're not here before this board to hear a debate on the qualifications of the other boards, how they've done it, or how we're going forward. We are simply here, is this project consistent with the intent of the bylaw that allows for this type of activity in these areas? That's it. If you can tell me why this project does not work in this location and is inconsistent with the intent of the bylaw, I'd like to hear that. If the debate is going to be purely about how poorly engineered it is, how poorly managed it was by the selectmen, or those are questions you need to bring up with the selectmen. The selectmen can stall this by saying they're not going to fund it. I assume, Nancy, was funding voted at town meeting for this, or is that the next step?
At this point, we wouldn't have to go to town meeting for funding because we have money from the Waterways Committee, Waterways Commission.
Thank you. But the Waterways Commission has to vote that money to be spent in that way, correct? Has to authorize it. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct. They do. Anything over $50,000 has to go before the Board of Selectmen.
So there will have to be a public hearing and a vote at that point. My suggestion is to the applicant, to the members of the Humrock community who are here, that's the place to stop it. We can't, if we were to vote against this special permit, it would be easy to challenge our vote as being, I don't know, arbitrary and capricious, or, I mean, we've
Outside
voted
of our
it
authority.
outside of our authority. We've done it, we have voted, we voted for the South River dredging, we voted for the North River dredging, the harbor dredging. This is something that we do, and we have established a track record that this is what we do. We dredge the public waterways for the public safety, and we do it consistent with engineered plans that are brought before us. I'm sorry, it's just, I don't think this is the place for the discussion that some of you folks want to bring forward. And I have to say, I find it challenging that some of the strong language is being used. I don't think it's a land grab. I don't think anyone's trying to do a land grab. I think that this is I see you nodding back there, and you've been doing lots of nodding, sir, and I appreciate that, but I've been a resident of Third Cliff. I've watched the Peggotty Beach area erode over the years. This is coastal property. It's what's happening. A number of houses on Townway Extension aren't going to be there shortly. The town has done a lot to try to protect that area as well, but there's a certain degree that you can't go beyond. The statements about the beach replenishment and the dune management, and it being 4 feet above and loss of view and sand and blowing, I appreciate all that. You're living on a beach. You want the waves to come through, or you want the waves to be stopped by something? I'm not the engineer who's going to design that, but Nancy and the various committees that have been before have been debating this, are trying very hard to come up with ways to resolve the issues for the Humrock community. And I think this isn't the place for the kind of comments that have been coming forward. It's not addressing the matter before this committee.
Just to add to that, the standard tonight at least as I read it, is no permit shall be granted which will adversely affect the natural character of the area in which the land referred to in the application is located. I take that to mean that the land will not be adversely affected by us dredging, meaning the land is better off if the dredging happens than if it doesn't. I don't take it to mean that this other land would be better off if we used the product of that dredging in another way. That's another question entirely, and I would agree with Ed, it's a question that's not in our power to decide what the correct answer is to.
I agree. I think the way that the bylaw is written, we have to look to where the actual dredging is going to be done. We have to take into consideration that area, that channel, and whether that dredging will adversely affect that area, not the beach area. Now, I'm not saying that something doesn't need to be done there, and I don't think that your fight should stop no matter how this board rules. And I think that the town, in watching things and reading things, that I think that they realize the importance of shoring up our beaches, whether it be by material or doing stuff with the seawall. So I think that the town has taken that step, but I think based on the way that the bylaw is written, the byproduct of that, of the dredging and where that goes, if it's done appropriately and permitted and done through the Army Corps rather than going to a beach, I don't think that that can be a reason to deny this. I think we have to look to the actual area and how that will adversely affect that channel. And based on what I'm hearing from the harbor master, the engineer, and well as town officials, that this area is in serious jeopardy and it's extremely dangerous. And I think not only for that area and maybe potential flooding, but boaters, people using that waterways, there could be a serious problem there.
Thank you. Just one other fact, briefly, if we want to.
One last comment, and I'll walk.
Just a minute, I have a question for one of the engineers. We had started to, and it's probably going down the wrong road anyway, but it started to address, in your opinion, the cost of using the dredge materials fill and the cost of new materials fill. And if you could maybe just give us a little.
Yeah, so first off in the application, we always have to look at different alternatives. So, there were at least 4 different alternatives considered, each one involving, beach nourishment or near shore placement. The total numbers estimated were approximately 4.4 million compared to what we're at 2.5 with going offshore. So that just involves, having the contract's equipment on site by the day, having one guy with a 5 cubic yard bucket picking up 30,000 cubic yards, putting it, into a truck, holding that material while he's doing it. It just comes down to, pricing on what the cost of doing that type of operation, so which gets back to, this dredging as an event, a navigation event, to solve that problem that we have there, when viewed separately from beach nourishment, it's just as cost effective to, buy sand and have it trucked to these individual private properties and have it dumped there. If not, it's cheaper to do that as opposed to, taking this sand and handling it through the same contract, for this project.
Thanks.
And again, that material would be compatible because we would pick it specifically for that site. We have a questionable material that may not work for this particular type of beach area. Humrock is definitely a very cobbly beach at the moment. There's a lot of heavy rock.
Basically, we're talking about the dredging project is a $2.2 million project. Beach nourishment project is a $4 million project in addition to, because of the handling of the material. I think the people in the audience are suggesting that you wouldn't have to handle it if you were able to pump it, but we've also been stated that it's not appropriate to the pumping possibilities.
And that's the thing too, sir, if we're able to pump it hydraulically, it's cheaper than mechanical, so we've already had that option in discussion, but it's just,
You'd be happy to do it if you could.
But pumping it hydraulically would in no way make it
It would be,
more compatible.
no, it'd
So
be,
it'd just kind of be like taking
yeah, hydraulic is
just
cheaper.
square pegs and sticking them into round holes and hoping some of them fit and some of them don't.
Right.
And I think it looked like, in fact, it said that it might be more adversely effective to the shellfish in the area, some of the material. So how would they differentiate between what's good material and what's bad material? What would that process be?
So they took the samples and they put through a sieve, it's called number 200 sieve size. And what that revealed, and the grain size has to be less than 10%. When they did it, there were at least two sites that were much lower, much higher than that. And then they would have to also be chemically analyzed through a firm to see if there was anything in the sediment that was contaminated.
And that would all be done on a barge?
And that would, well, we first have to do more sampling, and then we'd have to send it to a lab to be tested, because the samples in two of the sites were so fine that they have a tendency to hold on to chemicals, just the makeup of the material, way it combines with the types of things that we consider as pollutants, adhere better to that size, grain size. So those would have to be sampled already, that we know that could have contaminants in them. And then there were 13 sites sampled in all. In 13 site samples, 8 of those samples were at the number 40 to 60 SEV site, which were 80 to 90% more fine sands, which is not compatible and not conducive for the ability for it to go as beach nourishment.
Just the last question then.
Well, I just have one last comment. The material that fills in the channel doesn't come from the moon. It comes from the Hamrock Beach sediment area. It's taking them and removing it from the Hamrock Beach sediment system is detrimental to the whole environment in that system, in that location. And that is almost exactly what your regulation you read says, that you can't take it when it's going to be detrimental. And taking it out of this material that was in the system, was on the beach, was someplace else, went into the river, and then taking it and hauling it all the way to Wellfleet, which I still have a hard time believing is cheaper than trying to put it local. It meets your criteria. It's a detriment to the system.
Briefly, if you want to address that, because it's, although the material changes as it washes into the river. And
Yeah, so
it's not the same material because it's gone through a process to get into the material. So that's what part of what they're saying in their testing that they've done as well.
Yeah, so when you look at a beach nourishment project, you've permitted to dump material between the mean high and mean low water line, or the mean low water line and, a structure, the first man-made structure you get to, or, however you characterize a coastal beach, but it can't extend beyond mean low water. So you obviously have a huge amount of area here that's feeding that channel that's below mean low water. And those finer sediments are the ones that move more actively than, the larger beach sand, which you find next to residences. So that's part of the whole dredging process. You have to do however many core samples, send them to a lab, put them through a sieve, and see how many if there's less than 10% passing through that 200 sieve, it's considered beach sand. So you are talking about a couple different types of materials, which we've gone through. We send those results to the state and to the Army Corps to get approval to, no matter what we do with them, they have to look at the analysis and say, yeah, it's okay to go offshore. Or if you were to dump it on a beach, which, we already know the criteria for that, you'd have to sample the individual beach areas and make sure those two sediments are compatible. So what Nancy was talking about with, the samples that came in with the finer grain, in these navigation channels, it's just not compatible to dump on the beach, or it's extremely difficult and impossible basically to just dump this stuff near shore due to all the habitat. I think in this case it was clams and lobsters. So the Army Corps does not allow that to happen, in this case as well. So it's, the options are limited based on, state and federal regulations. And this is the most, it's really the best answer in this case, to resolve the navigational hazard that exists. I mean, that's what this project is about. It's a navigational hazard. The currents rip through here. I've surveyed 100 different, channels in Massachusetts, and this is, top 3. You go through there, you better know what you're doing, because if you have some novice, captain on the boat, he's bound to hit something. This isn't a place.
That's the one thing you've said that nobody in this room will disagree with you about.
So it's the most cost-effective way to do it. Whether it be a town, a public or a private marina. We run into this very often. And it always seems to go, the path of, based on cost, funding, and just, the material that you have to work with and reuse, and the processes involved and cost. So it's, hope that helps.
Thanks. The board have any other questions?
I want to give the gentleman
One
one.
quick thing. If we sign
I
these, then
recognize
it
that-
wouldn't be a problem.
Excuse me, I'm not going to listen to that comment one more time. The easement that was put before you, you're suggesting that this is some sort of a punishment. That's the word that's been used. I'm sorry. As I read the report that was given to me, these conditions that we are faced with, the disposal offshore has preference for a variety of reasons. The near shore dumping has to do with the shellfish issues. There's what is it? Cost, shellfish, salt marsh. So let's just not go there. I mean, I've already asked you to be civil, and I'm just asking, please don't go there. We are.
I just have a simple question.
Sure.
Mark Perfetti, 294 Central. If in fact, and I spoke with Nancy about this, I think a big problem with the easements are that they're permanent. Okay, so that from permanent, from your mind, you can get land grabs or whatever. But my question is, if enough people had signed the easement, would that dredging still be dropped out at sea, or would it be dropped off of Humrock?
I think that question's been answered, but
To answer it again, it sounds like what she said was that would have been one step in several steps that would have been needed to potentially put the sediment elsewhere. There still would have been compatibility issues, there still would have been pricing issues, logistic issues, there would have been the other permits, that would have had to have been a factor in the other permits. But as Ed pointed out, that's not the way the marbles fell. And we're asked a question here tonight that's under the power of this board, and I'm prepared to answer it.
And the question of a permanence of an easement, I would suggest that a lot of people have granted easements to utilities over their property in order to, and I'm not talking about the tie-in from the street over the house, but utility easements are permanent. We don't typically go after permits for a year, particularly when it's something of this nature. You need to do these are maintenance issues. This is beach maintenance. If you want your private property to be publicly maintained, you have to grant easements to the public utility or the public entity, the municipality, to be able to do that. And permanence is permanence. I'm sorry, if you don't want that, then you take personal responsibility for your private property. But if your private property, you're going to grant a public utility or a public municipality the right to access over and above what are available for police right, what is it, police? Fire, those rights that are already there. I mean, I'm in the same boat, I'm ready to act on the.
All right, discussion then, or a motion?
Move to grant the special permit under Situate zoning bylaw 460.2 for the maintenance, dredging, and mechanical, by mechanical methods of 30,250 cubic yards of sediment from the three areas outlined in the presentation and in the documentation by Fourth Engineering dated June 22nd, 2018.
All right, should we mention the...
Fourth Engineering.
Yes, and also should we mention the longevity of it? It might not be in one. What does that matter?
I don't think it matters. It's
Okay.
once they start at the.
Yeah,
Yeah. The whole-
the board recognizes that the project is to be completed in phases, as was outlined in the hearing.
All right. Good.
Second.
John is, I'm sorry, Bob Vogel, Building Commissioner. You know that. Is a special permit, does it expire after 2 years?
Usually has 2 years and has to be.
Right, so this would have to be renewed if this project lasted longer than 2 years, which it sounds like it will.
Yes,
Only if it doesn't initiate, once it's started.
Doesn't active work toll the 2 years?
Then perhaps it does. I guess that's my question.
I believe it does.
If you're considering it all one project.
If we gave a special permit for a building that was going to take 5 years to construct, I don't think they'd have to come.
No, I don't mean that. I'm
If it
thinking if
didn't
you do
start
phase.
within
you
2
do
years.
Yeah, you do phase one and then there's a hiatus with no work going on for more than 2 years.
But it's
It would
still-
just be, the suggestion is to the applicant that you come before us every 2 years to ask for extension of it. And as long as circumstances haven't changed, it's likely that it will probably be granted.
And to be honest,
Thanks,
I think
Bob.
there might be an argument that if there wasn't a 2-year gap without any dredging, they might not even need to come back.
I agree.
Because they've started.
No, I would say that's true.
Right. So, I think it was second.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Point of information, Mr. Chairman. Do you have a procedure for challenging your decision? Is there a procedure for doing that?
Yes, it could be appealed.
Yeah, statutorily, you have a right to appeal our decision. I think it's 20 days
From the time it's
from the
filed.
date that the decision is filed with the town clerk.
Do I get the information from her?
You absolutely can. You probably want to give her at least a couple weeks or more for us to get the decision together.
Thank you.
I didn't want to prolong the discussion, but that point never came up. And, it sounds as though from all of the things that we've heard tonight, it's the town's fault. These easements are an issue, but we have no choice. We're required to get them.
We still have
No.
7 more to go, so.
Why don't people get that? Oh, no, I do.
Get a couple
I do.
voided
I
checks.
saw the tip of the iceberg tonight, for sure. But it's not anybody's
Voided checks?
fault except
Yeah,
the
voided
regulations.
checks that-
I mean, if you want to fund it privately, then
Submitted to you
fine.
guys, but you don't need them anymore.
Okay, see ya.
Bob Vogel.
Yeah, hi.
Nancy, thank you.
I recognize the face.
How about the name? Rich Felix.
Yes,
Town of
please.
Mansfield.
Oh,
What's
my
that?
gosh. Absolutely.
Retired officer.
Yeah, this is a semi-retirement.
Yeah, I've seen your name on the town website.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a 2-minute commute, which is a big improvement.
He's writing it. He's writing
So you're
that.
living-
Probably go back.
Oh, you're still in
Probably
Manchester?
go back to the previous one.
Yeah, I think that reference to one of the emails, the previous.
I get it, but I want to just ask you, Rich, did this come up? Because, I've talked with Nancy.
We have
a lot,
our
and
next
I don't
applicant
pretend to know
tonight.
the specifics of it. But unless you want to do this privately,
Let's
spend all of your own money
Mr.
and
Bennett,
none of the
you gonna read it?
states or federal money, we're required to secure that public access.
3 Gardner?
It's as simple as that.
2? Yes, number 2, which would be Patrick and Emily, if you want to. Yes.
I don't see how. Maybe I just don't understand.
I'm aware.
Yeah. I guess, the bottom line is it's nobody's fault except the people who wrote the regulations. And we got to follow them like everybody
Patrick
else.
and Emily Farr, 3 Garden Road.
Good to see you. Good to see you too.
Special permit finding
Do you really?
in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 810.2 of the Scituate zoning bylaw to construct an addition to their pre-existing non-conforming system, increasing the gross floor area by more than 20% at 3 Garden Road in Scituate, assessment map 34, block 22, parcel 3.
And you guys are not doing any dredging?
No. Nope.
Clear that up.
Absolutely not.
Have your name and address and tell us a little bit about your project.
Patrick and Emily Farr, we live at 3 Garden Road. Yeah, so we're hoping to, I have the plan right here, basically add 520 square feet on our first floor and second floor out the back of our house. Our house was built in, I believe it was like 1929 or so before the before the bylaws were in place. So our property, or our current residence as it sits now, is less than, I believe it's the 8 feet off the property line. So it's existing non-conforming.
And all of the addition is meets the setbacks, the proposed addition. So nothing goes outside the setbacks that I could see from the plan?
Correct.
The side, the rear, and the
Right,
front?
right,
Okay.
yep. Only on the one side that is
Yeah, that's
non-conforming.
And are you on town sewer?
Yes, we are. Water and sewer, yep.
This seems pretty straightforward. Any questions?
No, so no real changes to the exterior of the home on the portion that's labeled existing? No.
So the front of the house stays exactly as is. What we are proposing to change on the exterior is the roof. So as it stands today, it's a bungalow-style house where it has the I don't know if you guys have it, but so the front of that, there's 4 dormers around the house. So what we're proposing to do is leave the front dormer and replace the other 3 dormers with a hipped roof. So that would be a change to the exterior of the entire house, but other than that, no.
Not to the footprint of
No,
things.
not at all,
Right.
no.
Did you have any
No particular comments, John?
any questions from the audience on this regarding it? Do we have a motion?
On the application of Patrick and Emily Farr for a finding to build an addition to the pre-existing non-conforming structure located on the property at 3 Garden Road, Scituate, I move to find that the existing structure is non-conforming with respect to the front yard setback and the right side yard setback. That the proposed addition is set forth in the plan prepared by Morse Engineering dated February 9th, 2018 by Gregory Morse, professional engineer. Increasing the square footage by 90% will not increase any pre-existing non-conformities. To the extent that the addition is an intensification or extension of any existing nonconformities. The proposed addition to the structure as shown is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Therefore, move that the board grant a finding on the application of Patrick and Emily Farr, and find under section 810.2 of the Scituate bylaws and chapter 48, section 6 of the Mass General laws, that the proposed addition creates no new nonconformities, and if it intensifies or extends any, it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
I got it.
You're not billing for that one, are you? I'm sorry, I had to.
0.50.
You're gonna have to send that.
So these poor guys, it's probably their first time here. They saw the first application. They didn't know if they were gonna have to move to Marshfield. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Yes.
Third,
Third application.
Who wants to write that one?
All right,
I'll-
all right then. Yep.
Wow.
Sharon Anderson of 41 Gerald Road in Milton requests a special permit finding pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 20, Section 6 and/or Section 810.2 and 470.6 of the Scituate zoning bylaw to allow raising and reconstruction of the pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling at 29 Wilson Road in Scituate, Assessors Map 55, Block 6, parcels 19 and 20, increasing the gross floor area by more than 20%.
You could just state your name for the record, please.
For the record, my name is Gregory Morse, registered engineer with Morse Engineering. I'm the property owner and applicant Sharon Anderson tonight. This was an application for a raise and reconstruction of single-family residence at 28. Pointing out the property on the plan here, Wilson Road is at the bottom of the page. Property line is in black. The property itself is approximately 1.79 acres in size, of which the front 8,117 square feet up in this area is upland area. The remainder out back is wetland. The house that currently exists at the site is located in this location here. It was built in 1968. It's approximately 1,384 square feet. There are a number of nonconformities. The lot itself is nonconforming with respect to lot width and lot frontage. Frontage is measured at 52.01 feet, while the requirement is 100 feet. This is located in the R3 zoning district. The existing house itself is non-conforming with respect to the side yard setback. The house sits at 7.2 feet off the lot line, while 8 feet is required. What we're proposing to do is take down the existing structure and put up a new one. It's a relatively modest sized house. It's going in approximately the same location. We have pulled it back slightly from the side lot line to bring that side nonconformity into conformance. The new building is 1,842 square feet. It represents a 33% increase in floor area. That non-conforming setback at 7.2 is brought into compliance with a 8.5 foot setback proposed.
And this is on town sewer as well?
Correct, this is on town sewer.
It seemed pretty straightforward for me. It looks like it doesn't qualify for 610.2 because of the upland issue. But what jumped out for me is the lot, our definitions get a little strange for me, but with only 8,100 square feet of upland, is the lot conforming as to lot area?
It's pre-existing non-conforming. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, so that would be one of the non-conformities.
Yeah, I think so. Our definition for lot area to meet doesn't use upland, but then again, it kind of does.
It doesn't, it doesn't.
I feel like you've been down road this before.
We've been down this road
mostly
before.
doesn't.
It doesn't. For example, if you look at Cushing Landing, the area across the street from next to the KFC pool.
Yep.
A number of those lots go out into the marshland. The marshland was part
Right.
of that upland, and those lots are much
Those
larger.
considering-
You know, one of them is like 4.5 acres or 5 acres, and it's clearly, the upland is much smaller, but, yeah, lot areas, it's
This lot's
conforming.
legally non-conforming as to lot area as well, right?
It would be legally
That would be-
non-conforming, but I would say it does
It's
conform because of
pre-existing,
the size.
however. You know,
Because of the size, so it does. Oh,
I
okay.
would say it conforms for lot area based
Okay.
on how we create
Oh,
new
yeah,
lots.
and that's what I'm asking, great.
But even if it didn't, it would be pre-existing
It's not-
non-conforming by lot
right.
area.
But that would be one of the release we might list in,
But I don't think we need to
Yeah.
list it.
if you
You don't think we would list it? Okay, and I'm not saying either way, I
But I
was
see what
really
you
just
mean.
asking.
I see what you mean, because basically if you look at it, the lot is really that much
Yeah.
smaller portion that we
But,
see.
again, that's mainly just a formality. For me, I see a project that doesn't increase any will create.
I think if we were creating a lot today, if the planning board were creating a lot, or someone was formatting a lot.
There'd be a lot more questions about it.
It would be, the non-upland would be considered part of the lot in terms of lot area.
It would, okay.
But upland is only necessary when we're talking about the amount on a 50-foot frontage
Right.
pork
Yep.
chop.
Right.
Great. I'm good.
Any other questions? Bob, did you?
No, I think that it's less non-conforming than what it's replacing. So, you know, that's the basic criterion you use. I'm kind of amazed this house was allowed to be built where it was in 1968. We did have zoning in 1968.
I wonder if did it replace another house at the time?
That's a good question. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, it may have.
No, it was a hefty lot then.
I don't remember.
I almost remember, but I'm straining.
Well, if it was, it would have been an isolated lot at that point, though, probably as well, so.
True. Yeah.
Pre-existing isolated lot. And
Yes, true. If the lot had been
in which case,
created.
with an isolated lot, even side yard don't apply,
Yeah, good point. All right.
technically.
Yeah.
We usually try to ask them to apply.
Yeah.
Questions from the audience? All right. Do we have a motion?
Did you write this one out?
On the application of Sharon Anderson for,
This is too easy.
actually, I did have one question.
Oh.
Floodplain, do we have to make a finding under 950?
Yes, I think we do. On this one.
Is it
it's
the
in
back,
flood
the
plan.
back portion of the lot there?
Is in the floodline.
So
Floodplain Water Protection District,
So we had asked for a special permit. It's in accordance with section 470.6 of your bylaw, which allows, if you're doing a substantial improvement such as this, it allows a special permit to be granted as long as there's 3 specific criteria. That page.
I've got it. Such improvements are consistent with the requirements of the National Flood Insurance Program.
Yes. So such improvements are in accordance with the National Flood Insurance Program, which we would have to be, this will require a filing with the Conservation Commission. Any improvements must be consistent with the building code, which it obviously would be, and any improvements will not affect the natural drainage patterns of the water course, the salt marsh here. We're not proposing any filling of that salt marsh here.
So I would say,
I just want to make sure that was covered.
yeah, I'm not sure we do need to. Because this is this one changed anyway, right?
So, do we still have a question, or what?
No, I think, right, so I think that we do have to make a finding under that.
Under 470.6.
Yeah.
Yeah, F, 1 through 3.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Okay. So on the application of Sharon Anderson for a special permit and finding at 29 Gilson Road to raise and reconstruct a pre-existing non-conforming structure, I move that the board find that the existing property is non-conforming with respect to the frontage as well as lot width, that the existing structure is non-conforming as to the side setback. Further, that the board find that the proposed reconstruction of the structure, increasing the square footage by 33%, as shown on the plan drawn by Morse Engineering, Gregory Morse, professional engineer, dated June 7, 2018, improves the right side setback and creates no new nonconformities, and to the extent that it intensifies or extends any existing nonconformities, such intensification is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood and that in all other respects complies with current zoning. I therefore move that the board grant the finding on the application of Sharon Anderson and find that under section 810.2 of the bylaws and chapter 40A, section 6 of the Mass General Laws, that the proposed raise and reconstruction creates no new nonconformities, and to the extent that it intensifies, such intensification is not substantially more detrimental. I move further to find that the proposed reconstruction complies with the provisions of section 950.3 A through E, in that if built...
No, it was 470.6.
And to be honest, I think maybe what I might have been alluding to is 470.4 makes that applicable only for structures that are in the protection district. This structure isn't, right?
Right, it's not, no, it's not.
It is?
It is within the district.
Oh. I thought that was the boundary back there.
That's Yeah, on the top left of the corner is outside the district, this property.
Oh, this is all in, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
That's all right.
didn't mean to slow your roll there.
That's right.
Complies, that the new structure will meet the requirements of section 470.6F 1 through 3, and therefore that the board grant the request for a special permit subject to the condition that they comply with 470.6F of the Scituate bylaws.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope you're not riding your bike home.
No, we're not gonna allow that.
Okay.
Who wants to?
Did I take the last one?
You took the last one.
I'll take this one.
I am.
Yeah.
You're the shortest one.
I got it, it's all up here. Do,
The fifth applicant for this evening.
Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Boston.
I'm writing this one.
You are. Yeah.
Steve.
Roman Catholic Archbishop of Boston, 66 Brooks Drive, Braintree, requested only under Scituate zoning bylaw, section 8 and Mass General Law, chapter 48, section 6, and any other relief that the Board of Appeals may grant, that the cemetery land uses as city area of the Nativity Parish Cemetery, 0 Meeting House Lane and Stockbridge Road, Assessor's Map 55, Block 3, Parcel 15-0 are pre-existing, non-conforming, and that the proposed expansion of the cemetery use is permissible in that the proposed expansion will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the pre-existing non-conformities.
Thank you.
I'd like to disclose that I'm not in a butter, but I'm a neighbor. I live at 28 Meeting House Lane. I don't think it makes any impact on my ability to.
Hi, good evening. Bill Orenberg. I'm here tonight with Brendan Sullivan, our engineer from Kavanaugh Associates, and I'm also with Steve Roberts, who's the cemetery supervisor, not only for the cemetery but also St. Mary's and Nativity's buildings. Unfortunately, Father can't be with us tonight. I'm going to have Brendan give a brief explanation here, but at the outset, this is basically continuing exactly the way that the cemetery currently exists. It's a pre-existing non-conforming use. There is, in 2008, this board issued a decision for the last section of this that was done. I've actually spoken and met with Mr. Provost, who's the direct abutter to this, to discuss things, explain things to him in his absence, and I think everything's copacetic. Steve also talked to him about the construction. Peter McEachran's actually going to do the construction of this. And one of the principal purpose here is that we're getting down to the last available cemetery lots here, and not only for St. Mary's and the parish, but for the community in general. There's a real dearth of burial plots in the town of Scituate. So, Brendan, I'll give you.
Sure. Brother Sullivan with Kavanaugh Consulting. So as Bill had said, we're building this, going to start this block, what we're calling Block D, approximately 244 burial plots. The existing area is all lawn, and we're just going to take the paved road, continue it around there, remove the existing gravel drive, push back some spoil piles that are down on the lower part of this, and create a staging area back here with a fence in front. We're also moving the existing shed that's there, to relocate it away from the proposed burial plots. So as I said, this will increase the burial plots by about 244 spaces.
And just the reason why you're in front of us is because of the pre-existing non-conforming.
Correct.
In a residential zone that we have.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And,
but there's no change of use.
No change of use, same use.
Okay. And then, Ed, did you, Stockbridge Road, the meeting, Stockbridge Road, we're not really close to Stockbridge Road, that's that way.
Yeah. Stockbridge Road is off to the side.
Yeah. That's over here.
All right, so we don't have to worry about any scenic roads or anything like that.
No issues.
I'm actually surprised why you're here. I mean, aren't we at a situation where we're just doing
I'm following the custom of the board as I question whether it's actually necessary myself, but in abundance of
Always
caution.
good to see you.
Yes.
We do have the overall plan for the cemetery has been presented
Right.
at previous hearings,
Right.
to be done in phases.
Right.
It's almost like the phase question,
Right.
special permit.
Yep.
So what you're saying, that any further expansion, that we don't need to go before the board then, is that?
Didn't say that. I
Oh.
asked why.
He's good, though.
I think,
Don't jump to conclusions.
in theory, you might have a larger project and identify it as
Okay.
to be phased, and then just come back to renew it periodically, but you'd still probably have to come before us to let us know.
Yeah, okay.
Because the last time you did it was about 10 years ago, if
Yeah.
I recall.
Yep.
And nothing's been done there in terms of, other than use of the existing plots.
Yeah. And I don't assume us doing another expansion probably for at least another 10 years anyway, so this should take care of us for quite a while.
I like the new plan where you put the vaults in.
You don't like that?
You pre-dig, and that's
Yeah.
kind of clever.
It's not working with this expansion, though.
Oh, it's
Doing
not?
it differently, no. And various reasons why we've decided not to go back to that. After having them for 10 years, we found some pros and cons with it, so we're trying to go more traditional, like we have.
So you have to get into section C, Ed.
Oh, well.
Bob, do you have any questions? No? Any questions from the audience? No. Do we have a motion?
On the application, the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Boston for a finding at Zero Meeting House Lane, St. Mary the Nativity Cemetery, to expand the use of the land as a cemetery. I move that the board find that the existing use as a cemetery is pre-existing non-conforming use. Further, that the board find that the proposed expanded use of the land, as shown on the plan by Cavagnaro Consulting, Benjamin Sullivan, professional engineer, dated June 13, 2018, will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the pre-existing non-conforming use. I move that the board grant the request for a finding under Section 820 of the Scituate zoning bylaws and Chapter 40A, Section 6 of the Mass General Laws.
That is Brendan Sullivan, not Benjamin.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Brendan.
At least they're correct.
So if I may just ask one more question before I'd be happy to second that. The abutters.
Yes.
As you said, the provost, the immediate abutter, and then the Dietz property extends. They're neighbors of the
Correct.
provost, and they extend backland and over. Will there be trees continue? I mean, I see you've got a couple of bushes planted. Are you going to do something? Are you going to try to maintain any large trees along the?
In front of the provost property, there's already heavy vegetation. About what Steve talked about is if there's any gaps in these things, that he's talked with Tom, and they'll fill in and make sure there's a consistent vegetative buffer.
Yeah. And I think we're only going to removing some trees, like, how many feet back is that going, Brendan? We're just moving the staging area back a little bit, so we have room. So we're only going to take down just the necessary trees you need for that.
Yeah. There's also a fence around the staging
Yeah.
by Armstrong.
Very happily second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks. I'll submit a draft decision for the board.
Thank you.
Man.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Next up this evening, we do have a quick presentation from Water Resource Committee. Yeah, she's been trying to get on our board in front of our board, I should say, for a little while. But if we could just, again, introduce yourself and briefly go over your proposal.
So I'm Becky Malamet. I'm the chair of the Water Resources Committee here in town. So I wanted to come before you tonight just to give you a little bit of background on the committee and a policy that we're looking to recommend to the water commissioners or the board of selectmen, and just get some feedback, really. As I mentioned, we act as advisors to the water commissioners. We work closely with the water department, DPW, North and South Rivers Watershed Association on all matters related to water resource protection in town. There's been a concern about running out of water, especially in times of drought, but also as development is increasing. So one of the solutions we're looking at is a water offset or water mitigation policy, which is in place in a number of towns in Massachusetts as well as nationwide. So the goal really is to allow for more longer-term sustainable development. We're approaching our Water Management Act withdrawal permit. We are permitted to withdraw 1.85 million gallons per day. We're at about 1.5 average, but in the summer that spikes to 2.5. So we just want to make sure we don't hit that 1.8 and do whatever we can to allow for more development and put some water back into the
Do you want us to
system.
wait, or do you want us to interrupt?
Sure, interrupt.
What happens if we hit that?
What happens is that the state then puts a lot of restrictions on the town. So they would probably require us to do something like a water offset policy. They would require different levels of water conservation. They could require a moratorium on development. So that's what happens.
Things get taken out of our hands.
Yes, exactly. So this is a tool that the DEP uses when people hit the withdrawal limits. There are very few towns that have done it voluntarily. Most towns who have implemented this policy have done it because they're required by DEP. We certainly don't want to hit a moratorium on development, and that would be another thing that they could do. The other issue is truly how much water do we have, which is different than what we're permitted to withdraw, and that's something that the Water Department and Planning are working on an updated system-wide analysis of how much water we actually have to provide to the town. So that's kind of another piece of the puzzle. And that's something that was looked at back in 2003, and so now they're updating that, and so that'll be another number we'll need to look at. So with this policy, we're recommending a 2-to-1 offset for developers or homeowners who are looking to increase demand on the water supply. And so what that looks like, it would be a fee-based system. We haven't nailed down the fee exactly yet. The fee would represent what it costs to treat a gallon of water for each additional gallon of water. So we've seen that anywhere from about $5 to about $10 a unit in Massachusetts. I think we'll probably be on the lower side. So we looked at if the developers or homeowners need to pay a $5 charge with this 2-to-1 offset for a 4-bedroom house, that comes to about $5,000. It's a one-time fee that you would pay as part of the fee schedule when you go before for your permits and before you get your water turned on, basically.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So when you say people that are increasing for water demand or water usage, do you base that off bedrooms, or do you base it off square footage, or do you base it off units? How do you?
So
base
that's something we're wrestling with and are really hoping to get some input from people that we're presenting to. There are a number of different things you can do. The two we're really looking at is no exemptions. Anybody who would increase water use, whether it be through renovation, adding a bedroom, or building a house, or building a series of homes, that this would apply to anyone, which most towns do, just to kind of make it equitable. We all use water. We all should pay to put water back into the system. There's also the school of thought of only requiring it if it's larger than 3 units or larger than 10 units. We're looking, like I said, we've kind of come up to the no exemptions. We're exempting anything that creates less than 100,000 gallons per year of additional demand, which equates to about a 4-bedroom home. So using the gallons per year versus the bedroom makes it a little bit easier and more equitable across the board to implement the policy.
They base that off what, like 100,000 gallons per day per bedroom?
So it's 65 gallons per person per day, and then Title V looks at 2 people per bedroom. So one of the things...
110, yes. 110.
130 for...
65 times 2.
130.
Yeah. More.
So one of the things we're looking at is creating a credit. So if you come in and your plans are already meet a certain standard for water conservation, then you would get a credit towards this fee. So it would start to incentivize people to come with better plans and with better sense of usage, not just using this blanket Title V and the 65 gallons per day, which comes from the Water Management Act.
Is that through like recharge, and is that how you do that?
Do what?
Like recharging water?
So, yeah, that's a big thing that I missed. So what the fee does, you pay the fee to the water department. It goes into a specific fund that can only be used for water conservation projects. So these would encourage recharge back into the system. So it would be things like retrofitting municipal buildings, commercial buildings with low flow fixtures, education around water conservation. We saw an incredible decrease in water usage during the drought once people were bombarded with water conservation tips and things to do and really feeling like they had to do it. What else? Leak detection, that's a huge issue in Scituate. Our unaccounted for water is incredibly high, and a lot of it has to do with old pipes that burst. There's huge leak issues up in Humrock that they're trying to deal with, so these monies could help both with proactive leak detection as well as fixing the leaks. Smart meters, which most meters are pretty old in town and are read 4 times a year. These smart meters could be read once a month. People could have real-time data to see how they're using water and how their changes increase or decrease their water. Finding new water sources. There's a reservoir project that will raise a reservoir to increase storage, finding new wells and new sources of water. A number of things, basically, that will just put water back in the system. And this fund will be very specific to those types of projects. And money can only be used that way. It has to be allocated within a year, and the water department will have to provide a report every year to show how the funds were allocated for each project. So it doesn't end up the monies don't just end up sitting in a fund and are never.
So it's essentially an enterprise fund.
Basically.
For a specific use.
Exactly, exactly. So we'll live within the water department's rules and regulations. It's something that once we kind of continue our presentations, get feedback, refine the policy, we'll then present to the water commissioners or the Board of Selectmen, and they would then hopefully put into the water department rules and regulations, and then it would be part of the fee schedule that someone would have to go through when they're doing a renovation or a build.
So you're not looking to add anything to the zoning bylaw?
No, not at all.
Right.
So this is
So
really
more
just sharing of information, getting feedback as a board, and people who deal with people who are building and renovating houses all the time, but also as residents. We just want to see what people think. We've been in our little water resource bubble for a while. So yeah. So we're just looking for some feedback, basically.
How does it affect you?
Well, I'm wondering how we evaluate designs coming in, for example, for plus or minus conservation practices.
Yeah, so that's something we would have.
Becky, just to be clear, maybe you already know Bob being the building inspector who would grant the building permits.
Right, right. And evaluate this as, again, as we do energy use,
Right.
provisions and other aspects of the plans or proposals.
And we would develop that specification and what that looks like. It's something we talked about initially, Sean Anderson and I. The town of Acton does it, and they've got a really great system up there. At the time, it seemed a little more than we could handle, but I'm getting a lot of feedback with these presentations that people really like this idea of there being a credit, there being a way to build better and not have to pay as much. So that would definitely be drawn out for you. And this would actually be part of the planning process. So when someone, in theory, if it goes on the fee schedule, that when someone submits their application, one of the boxes they have to check is that they've paid the fee, that the fee has been identified and paid.
Right, so for example, say you base it on bedroom count.
Right.
Bedroom with a certain amount of fee.
Exactly.
So it'd be similar to sewer usage.
Exactly.
But this would be, again, the bucket for water usage.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, and that fund would start. And then with that funds, you'd be proactively trying to conserve water elsewhere, either on the town, or it could be a case where you offer low-flow showers for existing residents, low-flow toilets, that type of thing in the future.
Yes.
Some towns do that now.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of them do them as part of this, as a water offset. Like Hingham does it as part of this, that's their water offset program because they hit their limit.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and they're drawing, the private company, but they're drawing their water from Hull.
Right. Right, exactly. So yeah, the biggest things we're looking for feedback on is the exemptions, who this should cover, if everybody. That's the big one. But then also, like I said, just generally what you all think.
Didn't we increase the hookup fee significantly about 15 years ago?
Yeah, so it's $6,500 per connection for.
Prior to that, it was like 125.
I don't know what it was.
I think it was.
That's a big difference.
I
Yeah.
really do.
It was under $500.
It was very inexpensive
Wow.
to hook up, and it jumped.
Yeah.
So basically, we're saying your hookup is going to go from being a 65 to a 11,000.
Well, no. Legally, no. It's going to be part of a user. It'll be considered a user fee and not a connection fee. Those are going to need to be. Those are very separate things.
But in order to have water, municipal water in your home, you're going to go
Yes.
from paying $6,500 to paying $1,100 or
Right.
$1,200.
Right, in the sense that it's a one-time fee, right, yeah, it's paid up front.
Seems like a lot, but I do understand, what's going on, but
Yeah, I mean, the only exemptions.
that would only be new construction.
Right,
If you're doing
would it
if you're doing an addition, there wouldn't be a hookup fee. The initial hookup fee would already been paid.
There wouldn't be a hookup fee.
But there would be the,
But potentially your addition would put you over a potential
If you put another bedroom.
Threshold you need to put
Threshold.
into the,
So if you
The
did
bedroom
for the
would have to
permits,
be
for planning
So if you did
permits.
like a raise and reconstruct of a 3-bedroom, put another 3-bedroom in, there might not be anything, but if you put a 4-bedroom in, it might
Right.
be an additional fee.
That
Right,
would make sense.
I don't think I have a lot of say in the matter, but as far as I'm concerned, we're gonna pay it sooner or later. We're using it faster than it's coming out of the ground.
I guess I go back to the question of everybody pays, no exemption type thing. I'd almost rather see it on the water rate as opposed to trying to hit the new people. I mean, someone who's trying to, I like the idea of having an offset for someone who's putting in a new project, if they can show that they're doing it in a thoughtful way, they get the offset. But I'd rather spread it out over the whole user's rate rather than try to maintain the system on new construction.
I'd like to see the identified areas where the money's gonna go too,
yeah.
like a plan, because it sounds like every year it's gonna be, would you say the money's gonna be spent?
It's going to be allocated.
Okay, so.
So for the larger projects, it might be allocated in year 1, but it might not be spent until year 3,
I mean,
depending on what the bigger
I mean,
projects
it
are.
costs, what, $1 million for a mile of road, a mile of pipe anyway,
Right.
so.
Well,
So that would be different, right, because that's not water conservation.
Well, I know you were saying about identifying leaks.
Right,
So would
right,
it be
right.
leak identification or fixing leaks?
It would be both, yeah.
So
So in
that-
that sense, it would be that small
Right.
slice of pipe,
Well, that
relatively.
That goes to
By
my,
fix, would they repipe or would they just?
It depends on the,
Yeah.
it depends
they
on,
reline and do a variety of
And
things.
laying out in the plan exactly what you can and can't spend it on just arguably gives the plan less value, right? Makes it less flexible as issues change over time.
but it will need to be very specific that it has to be water conservation based. So you can't do it just to replace pipes. It would have to be to replace a pipe due to a leak,
Right.
for example.
Right, not due to age or.
Right,
You know.
exactly.
Even though if the age of a pipe makes it more susceptible to leaking, then we're back around to
Could
the
make
beginning.
that,
Yeah.
right, but I don't,
Thinking it, though. Yeah.
right, right.
And then the other issue would be affordable housing, if there's some exemptions in that area as well. As they move forward, there might be,
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't apply for a 40B.
okay.
It wouldn't apply to a 40B.
It wouldn't apply unless
Developers could
we
do it as a good
convince
faith.
the developer that they didn't want to seek relief for that matter.
Right. But it's my understanding from town council that it wouldn't apply.
Well, we did have an applicant, I think it was the Proving Grounds, asked for relief from the hookup fee originally, when it was a
Yeah.
40B, and we denied it.
Yeah.
I mean, no, each one of the properties that was being hooked up had to pay the hookup fee.
They requested a waiver from every municipal.
Every municipal fee. Thank you, Brian, I agree.
It was hard to ask.
Exactly.
The answer was the same.
No. But, so I can see that there might be an 40B applicant who might say a waiver on the affordable component in order to make it
Right.
feasible.
Right.
But again, we don't,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be granted.
Figure it out.
And I guess to revise my earlier comment about spreading it out over the entire user population, I do think if you have a larger development, and I think in the information you sent to us for consideration, there was a 3 units or more, or
10
10
units or
units
more,
or
we've seen
more,
that.
or something like that. I can see setting some sort of a limit on it so that you're not hitting the individual property owner who's developing a lot.
Right. It breaks up a lot for one of his kids. and
Yeah,
all of a
break up
sudden-
a lot for the kids.
Right.
I mean, a lot of things we've done in this town, like the 50-foot frontage lot, was so that you could have create an in-law home,
Right.
on the property, that
Yeah,
type of
somebody
thing.
who's putting on 2 more bedrooms because they had quadruplets.
Right.
Yeah, we'd rather get the person who's
Whereas someone who's bought
developing their lot into a 5-family. Yeah.
someone who's found 15 acres and wants to develop it into 7 homes,
It's a little different.
that's a different deal.
Right.
Something to just factor into the whole project.
We look at affordability waivers and whatnot. Some people don't have to pay the same price for the school buses.
Right.
We'd have something akin to that
Sliding
here.
scale.
I see, okay.
And the conservation, would you be working on individual homes? Try to, like if they kept through with, washing machines, low-flow toilets, shower restrictions, no outside shower, things of that nature that would help reduce their use. Would you help with the cost of that, or would you?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, this would fund things like that. We would probably start with municipal buildings, it's just easier to get into them, and they're older. It can be a little trickier to get in. Ideally, we would set up a program like Cohasset has, where you can kind of sign up for rebates for different appliances, yeah. They pay money if you rip out your irrigation systems, that kind of thing. So I think that would be, ideally, we would just need someone to manage that program internally.
That is great. Did you have any?
No, I mean, so that's it. That's really good feedback. I appreciate it. If you could provide a letter of support, if you're so inclined, I can provide you with some information for us to bring to the Board of Selectmen. When we get there, I could send something over to Annie if you so desire. But that would be the only other thing I would request. And any other feedback Annie
How
has.
would we go about doing that? If I drafted one, are we able to circulate that outside of the meeting?
What?
Sure, it's like a decision.
Yeah.
You share a decision and
Right.
we comment individually.
And we'll read the letter into the next meeting and then submit it, or what's the?
That would sound like an appropriate.
Yeah, I think so. That would be, if we have to.
I'll work on a draft to circulate around.
Right.
Excellent, thank you. All right, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And your
Appreciate
thoughtful
your input.
feedback is very helpful. Enjoy the
Thanks.
night.
Just make it easy for Bob to administer. Don't.
Yes.
The building department has enough work on
It
their
has to fit on.
You don't need more things to consider.
8 by 11 sheet of paper, don't be.
Take care.
Thank you.
And,
This application?
yes. Jamie's.
No.
No?
294 Central.
Mark and Karen Betty of 2 Lads Way in Scituate request a special permit or finding under pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and/or Sections 870 and 810.2 of the Scituate zoning bylaw, and/or any other relief that the Board of Appeals deems necessary to allow raising and reconstruction of pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling at 294 Central Avenue in Scituate, Assessor's Map 69, Block 1, Parcel 9.
Good evening. Again, for the record, Gregory Morse Engineering. I'm representing the property owner, Mark and Karen Petty. This was a request for a special permit in accordance with both sections 470, which is your floodplain overlay district, and section 810.2 to allow the raising and reconstruction of a single-family home located at 294 Central Avenue. Central Avenue is located at the bottom of the page. The property line is in bold. The Atlantic Ocean is at the top of the page. The property itself is a little over 10,000 square feet. This is located over in Humrock. This is in the R3 zoning district. The entire property is in the floodplain overlay district as well. The existing home...
Have you checked these elevations recently?
They do change quite regularly, I'll give you that. The existing home is conforming with respect to setbacks, but the lot itself is non-conforming with respect to lot frontage and lot width, both existing at 50 feet. The proposal here is to take down the existing dwelling and construct a new one. The footprint of the new one is in approximately the same location. The existing house is 1,456 square feet. We're proposed at 1,568. It only represents a 7.7% increase in size. in accordance with section 470, which is the floodplain overlay district. The three criteria we spoke about earlier, this property would be constructed in accordance with the NFIP standards, the building code standards as well, and would not alter the drainage characteristics off the site.
Again, you're on town sewer here.
This is a septic system.
Septic system.
Yep.
Where is that located, the property?
Existing septic's in the front yard. We would be disconnecting it and then reconnecting it to the new house. It has passed a Title V inspection.
It has, or?
Yes, it has.
Really a lot of frontage and width situation.
Lot frontage and width, correct.
Oh,
And a floodplain.
Yeah, I did have one question. The assessors map, year built 1976?
Correct.
But the house is conforming, the lot is not conforming.
Lot, right.
So if it was built in 76, it was built
Existing lot.
conforming on an existing lot. If we
Gotcha.
replace something, it didn't create any new nonconformities.
Right.
I feel like we've done this before. But this is less than 20%.
But it's a non-conforming lot.
It's a non-conforming lot.
Due to
So
width.
under 810.2, Bob can't approve it, or he can approve it?
810.2 says Bob can approve it if the lot is non-conforming solely because of insufficient lot frontage or lot area or both. It doesn't address the lot width issue. So then you look at the last paragraph in that 810 section. It says, in all other instances, you must apply for a special permit or a finding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we could have handled that in the April revisions that we missed.
Yeah, that one would,
That would make sense. Get we hand over the.
frontage and, yeah, the frontage
hand
and
over the
width
width.
are most often the same.
Yeah.
So I think they just missed the word there.
We missed several words, if you read that with a more fine-tooth comb, but we'll deal with that another time. We're here, so we might as well take care of it.
Very good to read. Any questions? Well, this one, the elevation he's got there too. Take it. 17.8, and the basement at 9.5.
So the new building here is up on piles. We're elevating it, the first floor up at elevation 22, because this is in the velocity zone. So it'll be an open pile foundation.
Right, so you're essentially improving the,
Yes.
that situation.
Yes.
Questions from the audience on this one? Being done, do we have a motion?
Motion to grant the application of Mark and Karen Perfetti of 2 Lads Way for the property of 294 Central Avenue to grant a special permit under Chapter 48, Section 6, and Chapter 810.2 of the Scituate zoning bylaw to find that the home, this is a raise and reconstruct? No, that the raise and reconstruct shown on the plan prepared by Morse Engineering dated June 20th of 2018 does not create any new nonconformities, and to the extent it extends any existing, increases any existing nonconformities, that such increase or extension is not substantially more detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood, and also that the board grant a special permit under section 470.6
F.
finding that the items in section F of that section, items 1, 2 through 3, have been complied with.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
I guess I'm up.
Greg did raise his hand.
Just gonna put some more.
Yeah.
Need some?
Yeah, I'll take a hit.
Thanks.
That's some, okay. Oatmeal raisin, we can work a trade out.
That's what it says.
Jamie's is next.
Yes. These guys don't look like cooks. What's that? You guys don't look like cooks.
So this is one that by municipal acclaim, we
You've been here pretty good today.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Did you set up another one over there?
Yeah, I'm gonna set up.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see what a cookies are.
Yummy.
Down there.
Grab it first.
Yeah, grab it.
Why don't I get the middle, because I'm not getting up.
Yeah, he's got the
Council, I'm up again.
Are you okay with the rendering on this side? Because I know the camera has trouble picking up that side. Is that all right over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
360 Gannett Road Realty Trust LLC of 358 360 Gannett Road in Scituate requests a special permit of finding in accordance with Mass General Law, Section 6 and/or Scituate zoning bylaw, Section 810.3 and 830, to allow the reconstruction and relocation of the pre-existing non-conforming structure and foundation, which were accidentally destroyed by fire upon the premises commonly known as Jamie's Pub, located at 360 Gannett Road in Scituate, Assessor's Map 13, Block 2, Parcel 37, will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the destroyed pre-existing non-conforming structure.
Thank you. Steve, welcome. Introduce yourself.
Good evening, Attorney Steve Guard for the applicant. With me is Darren Grady from Grady Engineering as our project engineer. And this is Ralph, our project architect, and Paul, right? Paul's with us as well. We have a very brief presentation for this particular application this evening, as read in the public notice. If you don't know already, this is the Jamie's Pub in North Scituate. Which was accidentally destroyed by fire sometime last fall. The application itself lists 3 avenues of relief. The 48 Section 6 Clause 2, raise and reconstruct a non-conforming structure other than a single-family or two-family home. Our bylaw, 810.3, which I think is the one most applicable here, which is to reconstruct and relocate a pre-existing non-conforming structure that is not a single or two-family home. And the 830, which is the restoration of a non-conforming structure destroyed by fire or accidentally. The 830, in hindsight, after going over that with the building department and Bob and Neil, is less applicable because we are altering the footprint or the configuration of the structure to accommodate certain requirements for the modern building code, as well as accessibility requirements for handicap bathrooms, walkways, and access and egress. So this is a pretty straightforward project in the sense that the restaurant itself will not be expanded in any way in number of seats or occupancy of the building. The increase in area of the building is approximately 24%. You'll see in the table that I provided on the form. At the bottom, it's roughly 586 square feet, and that is to adjust the size of the building to incorporate the existing shed and the right-hand side that's a little open space. The building itself encroaches on the property to the east, the gas station, by about a foot. So we would be pulling that off the property line, obviously, and creating a 1-foot setback, thereby making it less non-conforming than it was before. We will be reducing, let's see, the front yard setback is 0 on the existing building. In fact, there's a little porch that actually might even encroach a little bit. We're going to make that 1.1 feet as well. No change to the lot width, no change to the area. The lot, by the way, is 5,700 square feet. The sideline setback meets the requirement, but nonetheless, it is on Mordecai, Lincoln, and Gannett Road. While this particular structure, it falls within the business overlay district, we can't really, in good conscience, avail ourselves of any of those particular benefits because it's not new construction. We are, here to raise and reconstruct the pre-existing non-conforming structure. The So it was determined that that really would not be the applicable avenue for that mechanism. The structure that was there before, just historically, was built in, I forget what I'm trying to think here. Let's see. Oh, 1928. So as you can, what I'm happy to report to the board is that the proposed new structure is remarkably consistent with what was there before and really preserves the character of the older building and fits into the neighborhood quite well. Not a lot of differences in what was there before other than the modernization of the structure. And there is an elevation issue with the rear of the property. So we dealt with that by having a step within the property, which still complies with architectural access board requirements for accessibility, but nonetheless allowed us to keep the front of the property at grade to the sidewalk and yet still deal with the back parking lot, which is off a little bit. So that having been said, I would just ask Darren to maybe quickly run through the plan, sort of pointing out the things that I just mentioned as where they're located on the plan.
Good evening. Set up your plan so it shows the existing conditions on this side, those conditions on this side. As you can see, the footprint of the building is a little bit larger than the existing conditions. Basically, we've set up a summary of impervious surfaces, and the net result is approximately 200 square feet increase. We have set up a drainage system that's an improvement over the existing building, and the drainage system is actually around the footing of the building. Okay. It's shown on sheet 2 in the details. Utilities for the building will remain the same. We'll use the tanks that are on site in the back parking lot. Same water service. Dumpster area is the same. There's 4 spaces, parking spaces in the existing scenario, and there's 4 being kept in the proposed scenario. Handicap access. There's a door back here that's handicap accessible, and then there's another egress in the front of the building here that allows you access from the sidewalk. If you have any questions.
Is that one handicapped in the front, or is the side?
Correct.
The front is handicap accessible?
It is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Yeah.
And I take it the new building with sprinklers?
Is what?
Is it going to be sprinkled?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry, yeah, my narrative has sprinklers.
No, but I mean, some of the space allows for a sprinkler room and some other stuff.
Yes.
That you've done in the renovation. Bathrooms handicap accessible as well?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
at least one of them. And again, there's no town sewer in North Situate, so.
No, we're trying.
Okay.
We're working that on another angle.
Yeah.
No, right now the property consists of, I think it's 3 tight tanks, and it gets removed. Removed manually on a as-needed basis, and it gets delivered to the town sewer treatment plant by a professional licensed transportation company.
Okay. Any questions?
I have some.
Sure.
So, Bob, you didn't, so this doesn't, 830 doesn't apply?
To the extent that it applies, it's probably subsumed into, the other considerations.
So now, if 830 doesn't apply, and we're looking at 810.3, do you need a variance?
No, because the Scituate bylaw states that we can do, it's by special permit. So
I think I follow you, but the repair, alteration, reconstruction, or extension, or structural change of such non-conforming structure, so as to increase an existing nonconformity, comma, or create a new nonconformity, including the extension of an exterior wall at or along the same nonconforming distance That's happening here.
No.
No, it's not.
It's not, okay.
Yeah, so good, no,
No, but it's a good point.
it's a really good question, and this was addressed with both Bob and Neil
Okay,
in a
and that's
pre-filing meeting, because I had the same concerns. I
Yep,
did.
Yeah, just,
So-
if you could walk me through it.
That's the section of the building that's on the neighbor's property. So we are moving it on our property and then another foot, so it's not at or along the existing
you're-
line any longer.
There's a distance of building that is non-conforming, that is being increased, but we're not considering that falling under the variance section because it's less non-conforming than it was when we started.
Well, I think the way to
Yeah,
look at it is pretty
right?
simple. It's just, it's not at or along the existing line.
You got me.
And that's
Yes.
what,
That's
I'm there.
basically.
That's the
we all
motion.
agreed.
Yeah.
I still think it's an 8:30, though. I still think you should make a finding at 8:30.
I'm not sure it's not an 8:30, but now that we've gotten over that hump, I'm sort of with Bob that I'm not sure it makes a difference which one it is.
So it was listen, I'll take an 8:30 finding too, because it does say section 6 finding is required under 8:30. Or if it is required, then we got to go to ZBA for a finding, but I like to get it, I want to get it right. In my opinion, having looked at both of them, because we are reconfiguring the footprint of the building and we are increasing it by 24%, I don't think that's what 830 allows. 830 allows reconstructing the structure in its existing area, footprint, in a different location, albeit if it makes it less non-conforming, but it doesn't address allowing you to expand the footprint on a pre-existing non-conforming structure. So I think the safer relief for us, if there were to be an appeal, which I doubt, is the 830 for finding myself.
Arguably, it's nice to have the
810, I'm sorry, the
832,
810.
because if somebody disagrees with our interpretation and needs a
Absolutely.
variance,
Absolutely.
and you win on your 830, you're in
When
good
that-
shape.
The 8:30 protects you.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think there's an argument to be made that 830 allows for reconstruction, and if you can't reconstruct under state building code where it is, and you're only increasing the footprint to comply with code, maybe you do fall under 830. I'd be prepared to vote on both.
I like it. I like it.
I think the motion.
All in favor? Oh, did I say that out loud? Sorry.
Yeah, I can make a motion.
Well, I'm looking
Well,
forward to
well,
having my phone ring off the hook by voting no. It's like that.
Well, I'll be one of the first people to call you.
The whole town will be on.
Luckily, this board is immune to that kind of public pressure.
Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, when will construction be complete?
Reservations are being taken on that app that's on the phone for reservations.
It'll probably start 20 days from now.
Oh, We're moving as quickly as we can. The holdup has been the insurance. Obviously, everybody knows with an accidental fire, there's all this long, drawn-out process with the insurance company, but I think that's coming to a head right now, and that's why we're here to get these things rolling for us.
Yes, sir, I think it's a needed service in the neighborhood. People are looking forward to having it back. It's been
Yeah.
long there for so long, that it's part of North Scituate.
I know, it's exciting to be part of this project, so a renewal, a revival of this project, so
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here.
All right, then, move a motion.
I got it. On the application of the 360 Gannett Road Realty Trust for property at 360 Gannett Road, with respect to the proposed reconstruction shown on the site plan prepared by Grady Consulting and dated May 31st, 2018, that the board grant a special permit under zoning code section 810.3, finding that the reconstruction will not be substantially more detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood, and find that the reconstruction does not constitute an increase in an existing nonconformity or the creation of new nonconformity. Also, that the board, is that a finding under 830, or is it?
Finding.
That the board find under section 830 that the reconstruction is due to an accidental damage or destruction, and that the reconstruction is less non-conforming than the structure as it previously existed. Did I hit the spots there?
On a 10.3 that you said, not creating any new nonconformities, including not extending an exterior wall along a non-conforming
addition.
distance within the required side yard setback.
Yeah.
Or yard setback.
Same, just add the word same, along the same
Along the
non-conforming
same.
distance. Yeah.
We have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Will
you.
you be,
Yeah,
Put pen to paper on that one?
yeah.
Okay.
Zach, I know the next question. I will help draft the
Would
decision.
would you offer a draft for our consideration?
You bet.
and
We'll move things along faster.
do you need any of these copies back for permit filing?
We have a sister filing with the planning board because we do have site plan approval here too, but they're welcome to keep them unless you want us to take them back.
No, if you'd like to take it back,
I'll grab them.
I don't have to write anything, I don't need the,
yeah, that way we can reuse them.
Turned down like the weekend the new playground opened, didn't it?
I don't, it was October like 17th, I think. It was last October, wasn't it? Is that?
I took my kids to the new playground. And the fire department was going crazy.
we didn't make it part of the decision.
On the condition that they continue to have the Alamo chicken sandwich.
Really? I know it never went.
I'm a Thanksgiving,
Subsequent
Thanksgiving
condition
guy.
must continue to have the Alamo
For 8
chicken
years, I
sandwich.
never
Is
went.
that it? Oh, okay.
Used to go
Should I
there
put that in
every
the
Sunday.
permit?
Never went.
Every Sunday for brunch and ice cream.
Oh, brunch is crazy. I don't know how
That's all
they
you
did
could
it.
eat. Buffet.
I used to go there before Caddy.
Eggs Benedict.
I drove up from Rochester.
Eggs
I've got all
Benedict.
that, well, not the photos, but I've got enough.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Dave. Nice tie.
Thank you.
Good night.
7?
Yeah, it'll be a condition.
Made up a little while.
Second last one.
He's number 7.
Karen Custom-Border, as represented by her husband, Edge, of 66 Brockton Avenue in Scituate, requests a special permit or finding pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and/or Section 810.2 of the Scituate zoning bylaw, and/or any other relief that the Board of Appeals may grant to allow the construction of an addition to the pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling at 66 Brockton Avenue in Scituate, Assessors Map 40, Block 5, Parcel 5, increasing the gross floor area by more than 20%. And I should tell you that I received a call today, and Nikki isn't available to be here because she's home with her month-old newborn. So
Okay.
Oh,
That's nice. And also,
absence excuse.
also, if you want to make note, we received some correspondence in favor of the proposal. I think
overwhelming amount of
a couple, yeah, so we want to enter that in. So if you just state your name, address, and tell us a little bit about your project.
Sure. Mitch Custom Border, 66 Brockton Avenue. The project we would like to do would include a mudroom off the side of our house, off the left side as you look at the front of the house on the pictures. That's 6 feet off the side of the house by 24 feet long. The majority of the project would be a 3rd floor that would include master bed and bath and an electrical room.
And also, there's a balcony, proposed balcony off the...
Off the back of the house, that's correct.
Okay, that would be on the 2nd floor? or
On the 3rd floor.
3rd floor, okay. And then on the 1st floor, that's the one-story addition?
That's correct.
Okay. I think we got it.
Is the balcony cantilevered, or is there living space underneath it?
No living space.
And you're built in 1949. And you were on town sewer, too?
That's correct.
So, I don't think we didn't get the chart, right, or did we?
No, I don't think we did.
But it's 5,038.20, right?
5,000 plus or
lot,
minus.
50 foot. Well, something must be non-compliant.
Well,
It's here.
the width.
10,000,
The
should be
width, right?
10,000.
10,000 square foot area.
10,000.
But it's
Yeah, you got
front
area.
setbacks.
No, front
No,
setback's
setback,
39.
okay.
Front,
35
rear,
plan.
and sides are good, right? So it's just lot?
8.2,
Lot width
lot
and
width.
frontage.
lot width and frontage. All right. Lot area, lot width and frontage, yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, I'm working on my decision already.
Well, did you have any questions on?
No, pretty straightforward. We'll look at the drawings when they come in, the structural, and make sure that the existing construction can support the third floor. You're not in a flood zone. Rockland Avenue's not in a flood zone.
We actually are in the flood zone, but
Are you?
we just had that, the surveying done.
Okay, so you've got an
Certificate.
elevation certificate in the works?
We actually have it now.
All right, and so we're going to have to be aware of the 50% threshold that exists, beyond which you've got to meet all of the requirements for the flood zone you're in. So
Oh, here we,
Probably put that.
But that doesn't have to be our,
that's
that
that's
doesn't-
not
that's
that's
not our
not
decision.
zoning.
That's purely a
but I
zoning.
see height here on the plan.
That's height above grade, Tony, yeah.
I always lean on you for the height because I get a little confused by our.
No, they're well within the limitations of the height
Right.
for zoning.
Right, it's 35 feet in the zone, right?
35 feet measured halfway between the eaves and the ridge.
He's at 31 point.
Yeah, 31, okay.
And 40 feet max to the ridge, and they're at 31.1. So that
Great.
won't be a concern.
Oh, yeah, that's on the second page. The folder up sheet.
Mine doesn't pull that.
Yeah, I think that was on, this was separate, but then there was a piece that came.
Let me
Middle
get
one.
it. That's all right. I don't think I got it. Yeah, it's fine.
Because the one was the first floor,
Yeah.
the one was the second story.
Yep.
Do you have a proposal?
Motion, this is just 18.24. On the application of Karen N. Custenborder and Michael D. Custenborder of 66 Broxton Avenue in Scituate, that the board find with respect to the proposed additions shown on the plan prepared by Michael Clancy, dated April 9th, 2018, that the board grant a special permit under section 810.2 and find that the proposed addition does not create any new nonconformities, and to the extent that it intensifies any of the existing nonconformities, being lot width, frontage, and lot area, that such intensification is not substantially more detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Amending it to Mitchell D, but
Great. Thanks so
they
much.
didn't, they got it wrong on the deed too, so spelled it wrong.
On your deed?
Yeah, they hand wrote in T. You were Mitchell.
You're never gonna sell it now, but when you do, just do an AKA, you'll be fine. You're, from now on, you are forever FKA.
Mitchell.
I'll take it, because you're writing the letter for the thing, right?
Oh, yeah, sure, I get off free for the letter? Whatever,
I don't know, I think it's,
yes, no, she makes the rules, I'll do this one. I don't wanna be in the debit. I got it. I was taking notes. I got it.
And the one we've been looking for all evening.
I'm out of school, I can't think, so it's like.
Can't wait till September.
What's your excuse for the other night?
I'm too busy to think.
And
I'm old.
just to be aware that all the other board members received the letter from the town council on this application.
I'm sure I did.
All right,
Yeah.
yeah, just if you could
You
do
do have a
that.
copy?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
I'm sure I can do it as we go. Thank you very much.
But just to reiterate to, if you want to read this in, and then we can.
Diamond Development of Post Office Box 1480 in Duxbury requests a special permit pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, in Section
We've actually had this discussion before.
610.2B of the Scituate zoning bylaw to allow the
think we voted
construction
on
of a single-family dwelling on a lot which contains 50 feet of frontage and 50 feet at every point between
Yeah, we'll probably bring
frontage,
it up at all.
street, or way, and the nearest part of the dwelling to be erected on said lot at 53 Border Street in Scituate. Assessors map 6, block 2, parcel 6.
Thank you. So I guess I'll let you start, Steve, but just a brief history. This is, we did have a decision on this that has been appealed, so that is pending. This is another application seeking a little different route, but also, again, town council has commented on it too, so if we want to hear them out and kind of review it, then we'll see where we're at.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Ready?
Sure.
Steve Bjorklund, Diamond Development. As John had just stated, this property at 53 Border Street was in front of the board for basically a Section 6 finding to reconstruct a non-conforming single-family dwelling and locate it in an area that was totally conforming, met all the setbacks and all that. It is subject to an appeal from one of the abutters, and right now it's presently under appeal. The orders of conditions were issued by the Conservation Commission. That's under appeal, and I think DEP has until next week to get out a superseding order of conditions on it. What I did, when we first got this property, we were told that the structure was put up in 1953, and when we really researched the records, the best that we could come up with was that the owner bought the lot in 53. There was a water service that was shut off in 1954, and in 1955, the gentleman was listed as a resident at that area. The assessors, I think, had 1957 as a date for construction of this, and the assessor's records, they may be correct possibly that it might have been put there in 57, but again, we've got some records or indication that the dwelling was there prior to that. We've been in front of the Historical Commission for the general bylaw that talks about the demolition delay, and they have determined that the building is not a substantially significant structure, so there is no demolition delay as far as taking the existing dwelling down. So after I started looking at this, I was trying to figure out how it might be simpler, thinking that if the court has an issue of the actual date of construction of the dwelling, it would probably just get remanded back to this board again for a finding to determine when exactly that building was put up. So I started going through the bylaw again, and after 33 years of using the 50-foot special permit bylaw in town, I figured it doesn't matter if the structure is non-conforming. It doesn't really matter when the lot existed, whether it existed in 1965 in its present configuration, which is part of the appeal, was that the lot had been changed and was actually in this configuration in 1965. So, in looking at that, I know we have 50 feet of frontage, and I know we have 50 feet going back to where the proposed dwelling is going to be. And if I was creating a brand-new lot after the adoption of the portion of the bylaw that requires twice the area for a 50-foot lot, which I believe was early 1990s that was put in, which this lot is obviously way before that.
92.
92, okay, I wasn't sure it was 92 or 94, but 92 is fine. But this lot existed in its present condition since 1965. So when I read section 610.2B, again, Ann already had read it, but it says that it shall be permissible by special permit granted by the Board of Appeals to erect a single-family dwelling on a lot which has 50 feet of frontage and 50 feet back to the dwelling, which is exactly what we have here. It goes on and states, subject to the following conditions. Okay? And I'm going to skip one for a second, and I'm going to go on to two, and that's the quick handout that I gave to everybody was just that section of the bylaw, 610 and 620. But the second condition, because I'm going to try and do it simple and use a process of elimination if I can, if we were going for two 50-foot lots at the same time, we'd have to apply for a common driveway. So that's not applicable, so we don't have to file for a common driveway. We're just going for construction of one dwelling on here. The third one says that any lot receives a special permit under this section, can't be further subdivided, and the plan that is up here, we actually added a note to that plan, and it's the note that you require on here that says it cannot be further subdivided. So we actually added that as the last note on the plan that's in presentation here. So we comply with that. The fourth condition, it says if the Board of Appeals grants a special permit for a 50-foot lot, you can impose safeguards and limitations if you wanted us to have greater setbacks than what's allowed on a conventional lot. You can do that. My history with the board and getting many of these lots approved, I've never seen the board actually ask for larger setbacks than what's actually in the district. But I can tell you that the home that will be proposed on this lot will actually exceed the side setback that's required in the district. It's actually more than double, I think, what's required for side setbacks, and far exceeds the front and rear setbacks as well. So those conditions 2, 3, and 4 either apply and are met or don't apply. So what it really comes down to is the condition number 1. Condition number 1 states, any such lot to be created after the effective date of this bylaw shall be at least 2 times the required area of upland for the zoning district in which the lot is located. Okay? So that's the main body of what that section says. Goes on to state that if anything is subject to Chapter 130-140, which is the Wetland Protection Act, you can't include any wetlands as part of that 40,000 square feet that would be required out here. It does not include, or you do not take out for area that's in the town of Scituate floodplain. That's actually allowed to be used because there's a lot of sites that are in the floodplain that are uplands. And that area is not subject to Chapter 130-140. So we have a very small portion at the back of the lot that is actually wetland. It's only a few square feet. You can see the wetland line on the plan. The existing lot is over, let me go up to the lot for a second. The lot itself contains 44,933 square feet of upland and a total of 44,967 of area on the entire lot. Even if, for some reason, they thought that the floodplain was area that couldn't be included, which isn't the case, the area above elevation 9.2 totals 4,154 feet. We'd still have over 40,000 square feet, even if somehow that area was included to be eliminated. But again, it's not. It's only the bordering vegetated wetland that would come out, and that's less than 100 square feet, I think. I'm aware of the fact, or was made aware of the fact today, that of the memo that came in with town council, and it basically is 2 paragraphs that came through. First paragraph talks about the initial application that we had with this, and that it's under appeal, and we came in under the non-conforming section of the bylaw, and that's true, we did. All that stuff is accurate, okay, and then an appeal was taken. But then it goes on to say, on June 12th, Diamond subsequently filed for a request for a special permit pursuant to 610-2B, which we did, of the bylaw to erect a single-family dwelling at the property. Section 610-2A provides that you need 100 feet of frontage, and there's an exception, which is 610-2B, and it says this is the exception. Pursuant to 610-2B1, if you read this very closely, because this is a key point, 610-2B1, according to Town Council Cindy Amara, is read in the bylaw, which is right in front of you, to say the board can, by special permit, allow the erection of a single-family dwelling on any lot created after the effective date of this bylaw having 50 feet of frontage. If you go back to 610-2B1, it says any lot created after the bylaw has to have twice the area. She totally misses what the bylaw says in her letter. Okay, it's apples and oranges. What happened was, if you have a lot that was existing prior to, it's my belief, you don't have to have twice the area. If you create a new lot, which again was done in the early 90s, that you had to double the area if you were creating a new lot. We're not creating a new lot, but we just coincidentally happen to have over twice the area anyways. So I personally believe that we're asking for, you can grant relief under this section of the bylaw as well. The plan shows the existing dwelling is coming down. Whether it's non-conforming or not is irrelevant, because the building is being totally removed, and I'm just asking to build on a 50-foot lot that comes back 50 feet to the house, which, again, under Section B, the first portion of it says, if anybody wants to build on one of these lots, the zoning board can grant a special permit for that. That being said, it's difficult for you guys to go against the town council opinion, okay? It's one of those things. I wouldn't expect you to go against the town council opinion, but what I would respectfully ask the board to do is go back to competent counsel that can read what the bylaw says and provide you with an opinion that actually follows the bylaw, not words that are made up that don't exist in the bylaw. That's my presentation.
If I could go first. It was going to be a lot easier for me to go against town council before you implied that they weren't quite so competent.
I wouldn't want you to go answer.
That aside, town council's opinion is extremely useful in many regards. It is, in most regards, not binding, and I respectfully disagree with a large portion of the letter that was submitted by town council. I feel that 610.2 and 610.2B doesn't preclude our approval just because a lot already existed. I'm not sure I agree that this is totally apples and oranges, nor do I think I would vote to approve a lot under 610.2 if it didn't have 2 times the lot area. I agree that there's an argument that we could, given how it was drafted, but I don't think that's the intention of how it was drafted. And I think the intention is a big part of the reason that we're up here. But as you said, coincidentally, and I'm not so sure you'd be here if you didn't have twice the area, you do have twice the area. And I think that approving this does not run afoul of the intention of the way 610 was drafted. Right now, you have a legally non-conforming lot, and if we approve it, you will have a legally conforming lot that the bylaw gives us the power to add additional zoning restrictions to. And I think you're going into that with eyes wide open, and I do not believe that the prior application, which was for entirely different relief, has any bearing on this application.
Right. Thank you.
That's the end of my soliloquy.
I mean, we are We're not creating a new lot, because the lot already exists.
No, we're creating a legally non-conforming, legally conforming lot, I
Okay,
believe.
that's what you're,
Yeah.
okay.
Could I make one more comment before you get to the rest of the board? Normally, when we do these in regular course, if I didn't do the application first, the prior application first, I would go to the planning board for a Form A plan, and I would create a lot.
Right.
I would then come to this board, and I would ask for relief to build a single-family dwelling. So whether it's one day before you act on this, or 35 years before you act on this, the lots that I come in are already existing before I come to you guys.
We were
Every
doing
time.
pretty good already.
Every
Remember,
time.
it doesn't matter
Yep.
how much you win by.
But just, again, I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that those lots are almost always created before you guys allow the construction of the dwelling. Because when you read the first portion of it, it just says you guys have the ability to grant a permit on a lot which has that. So if you haven't created the lot, how can you give a permit to build on a lot that doesn't exist?
Provided that the following conditions
Right.
are met.
Right.
Huh? Anything to add on this? All right.
What's the effective date of the bylaw? 95?
Which portion?
Section 1.
Section 1, 610.2.
Sometime in the 90s, they changed it to go up to twice the area. I know back in the 60s and 70s, they didn't have that
50-foot frontage lot.
requirement, no. It just said you could come in and request a permit, right. So, but the plan was created in 65, so it far predates that.
You've got an existing lot, no question, right? The question here is whether you can construct, the suggestion is that it has to be an undeveloped existing lot in order to construct.
Well, I also can tell you that what's happened previously on the board, I think the Lilly property down the street, you actually created a 50-foot lot around an existing dwelling on that one, and it was done again up in Minot, I think, at the next meeting. So there is a history of Scituate allowing that to.
I think we did it on
to
Jericho
happen.
Road
Yeah.
to divide.
It's been done a number of
divide
times.
Two
Existing
existing
dwellings.
dwellings on
Yeah.
a single lot.
It's moved.
great.
He's knocking down the house,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I mean, if the house disappeared, you know, accidentally or otherwise, it could be rebuilt on the lot.
Doesn't matter, right.
I wouldn't vote to approve this lot if they wanted to keep the house there, because then they would need a variance for the new legally conforming lot. So it'd have to be an application for the new lot and a variance, which we're not gonna give on a lot that's got 44,000 square feet.
No, you'd make them.
What's that?
Make them rip the house down.
That's part of the condition of creating the new lot. I don't, especially given the way that we've ruled under 610.2B, I don't see anything that even begins to give us even an argument that we can say that this isn't a lot that qualifies to be a legally conforming lot under 610.2B without that house there.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the width.
Right.
You know, we've got the.
Got everything.
Yeah.
Right. And my argument always is if the property conforms to the bylaws, you should be able to use it. And
And to be honest, I think you and I have talked about before, the way the bylaw is written, there's an argument that we don't have a choice but to approve it. It shall be permissible
Right.
by a special permit granted. There's no other
Maybe.
weighing of options we have here. It's, do they have the math? If they have the math, it shall be permissible. I don't see anything in here that says it shall be permissible unless the lot already exists before you get the approval.
no, I've always argued that, well, we had a property, I think, on Country Way. There were multiple dwellings on the property. We separate that up into a 50-foot frontage lot.
That went into, no, actually, that was done under subdivision control law, I think,
That's right.
originally. As multiple, like I say, multiple buildings, that's an 81L exemption, because they proved that they predated zoning.
Right.
So again, you get into, if something's non-conforming in that situation, it's a totally different relief than this permit. This permit has nothing to do with non-conformity at all, or any dates when the lot was created. If I created it today or tomorrow, I'd walk in for the same relief, and again, 33 years of doing this, I haven't seen one that's been denied.
I mean, again, a lot of respect for town council, but this section is not applicable to pre-existing non-conforming lots like property with an existing dwelling thereon.
Well, it's a pre-existing conforming lot.
Right.
Right,
As long as I get a special permit.
To pre-existing non-conforming lots, well, that's what this is. I just disagree with that interpretation. Where does it say it's not applicable to?
But how is it pre-existing non-conforming?
well, the setbacks of the house.
Because the
Well,
house is
the lot's
Right.
non-conforming. The lot isn't big enough for the district.
But it is,
The front-
it is under the,
Well, that's right.
That's a relief
That's what I
you see.
mean.
Relief.
Correct.
I disagree. Saying that it's not applicable, it's just, it is.
any lot that shall be created after the effective date, so, but this lot exists,
Right.
and it meets all the criteria of a 50-foot frontage lot,
Yeah,
so it's a
I
pre-existing
agree.
conforming lot.
I agree with you.
Right, and the construction on that lot can only occur with a permit granted by the board.
This lot, no matter how you look at it, this lot meets the requirements of Section B. And by you doing that and gaining the benefit, you are then subject to our imposition of additional conditions, which I think, I love this section of the bylaw. I think it allows the board and the town a great deal of flexibility and increases open space.
Our ability to
Yeah.
manage open space.
Now, what, am I brain damaged, or was I not on the board, or absent from the board when the decision
I
was
don't-
under
April,
review?
I think you're on vacation.
I think you were away, yeah. We'll
Oh,
excuse you.
yes, that's right.
Can I ask
to
what the-
to refresh, in one person's opinion, I think I considered it to be a very straightforward a 10.2 application.
Okay.
That didn't, to me, present any characteristics that made it
Was it
anything
de-
yes
was it
than
denied by the
a
board?
3x3
No,
yes.
approved.
It was approved, but then appealed by
Yes.
By and butter.
a butter.
And again, on the original application, after we did a survey and located the existing dwelling, there was some confusion between some of the plans because they had added land in 1965, and they thought that they were making the side of the house on the left-hand side of that plan to make the dwelling conforming, but they actually missed it by about 4 or 5 inches. So when we did the survey, and not that it made a difference to me anyways, because even if it conformed and I wanted to take the building down and put a bigger building up there, I believe the board would have given me that relief, under that section. But the dwelling at that point, whether it was conforming or not conforming, didn't really make a difference.
That hearing, did we possibly raise the possibility that this lot qualified for 610?
No, but I know it's actually in part of the appeal that it quotes that section through the appeal process. So again, what I'm really doing is I'm taking everything that was located in the appeal by the abutter, anything that could be considered to be confusing in that decision, and removing every bit of it. And I'm straightforward, I want to build on a 50-foot lot with twice the area. And I absolutely believe the board can grant me the approval to do that.
I honestly don't think the prior application has anything to do with this. It's entirely different relief under a different section. And
Yeah.
It's not a repetitive.
I see what I need.
Yeah. My question, I mean, not that it matters, but whether this decision will or won't affect the appeal of the other decision.
Nope.
I don't think it
You think it
does.
might be
'Cause
independent?
the relief we're granting here is for the lot. The relief we were granting there is for a structure. The applicant isn't looking for any structural relief in connection with this application.
What relief was granted on the application? It was a pre-existing non-conforming
Because it's
structure?
due to setbacks.
Because of setbacks?
Yep.
And the fact that the lot had 58 feet of frontage instead of 100 feet of frontage.
But you gave us a proposed
think it was
dwelling on that
frontage.
application,
Frontage
right?
And they had a proposed dwelling. The actual decision stated in it Even though we gave all the setbacks and all that for the dwelling, we gave exact setbacks for what we're proposing, the final decision, if you remember, actually Sarah was in here as part of the decision-making process. At the end of that, the board had the decision modified to state that as long as we meet the setbacks with the new dwelling, we can place it anywhere in the lot. And the purpose for that was if conservation, I think at the time, conservation hadn't finished what they were doing, so they thought that we might need to slide the dwelling a little bit in either direction. And Sarah said, did it make any difference to the board whether the structure slid a little bit? So the decision stated as long as we met the setbacks, we were okay. But again, it's our intent to be further, further away than what's required anyway.
Essentially, the board got less restriction on him in the first application than we would here, because we didn't, under that decision, have the right to grant any additional restrictions.
Right. So some, for example, what are some of the additional restrictions you might want to bring, if any?
Oh, say we heard from someone and there was some concern because of a special characteristic and we wanted to increase one of the side setbacks to 16 feet or something. We didn't actually have that right, I think,
Right.
under the prior application.
I'll just make it up.
Yeah, and we would here, if we felt it so necessary.
It would be an unusual move on the board's part, but the lot can have curious configurations that mandate that sort of a...
Yeah, exactly. I didn't mean to imply that we should.
No, but a large boulder on the property might...
Of course.
That we don't want to have destroyed or something like that.
For a tree or... Bob, did you have any questions on this?
Not really.
Scratch your head too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've followed the discussion, but I don't think I really can add much to it.
Well, we're going to open it up. Yes.
Jim Spellman, 49 Bloor Street. I think everybody in the room knows that I'm an appellant in this case and appealing the decision this board made on this very project on May 11th. In that, I stand, I suppose, in something of an adversarial relationship with the board and the developer. And have to say I'm cautious or resistant to say anything at this point. I do want to note that, just have it noted that I'm in this hearing. And again, I raise opposition not only to the project, but now again to the procedure of the board. The simple fact that you've allowed this hearing to proceed this evening, knowing full well that the petitioner presented this very project before you in the past, and that the decision is under appeal before Superior Court, seems to me quite a violation of procedure, which, to my mind, could only further compromise your standing before that court. I look forward to revisiting it at that time.
I guess just, is there, in your looking at the project, is there something you don't like that you don't want built there, or is it the location of the house, or what?
I'm sorry, John?
Is it the location of the house, or just that you don't want anything built there, or I'm just curious as to what?
You're missing the point.
I guess, what, help us.
The point is that this whole project was brought before you. You made a decision, and we're in appeal before the Superior Court. You all have been offered, actually, Mr. Chair, Attorney Bucieri, you and Mr. Allen did not receive the packets, or somehow they were returned from me. I have them here for you if you'd like them. It describes the appeal, our appeal, and the basis for which we have set that out. All of Mr. Borkland's concerns, seems to me, are fair game in the appellate court, but to reopen a new hearing here is just entirely inappropriate. Entirely inappropriate.
Well, I think one thing, again, there's two different reliefs sought here. One relief sought in the other appeal, and a different relief sought here for the land. And I think what Anthony has mentioned is that we do have some relief in granting some, more relief in granting conditions on this permit than we did on the last one. So we're asking you,
Again, I don't, you know,
I guess, I don't know what you're seeking here, from us, except,
No, I'm here, I was here to listen, and what I mean to say, there's an odd irony, isn't there, that if you determine through this board that it's a conforming lot, then in fact, it never needed to be before you in the first place.
No, it would still need to be
it
before
would
us.
need to perform us.
Because you need to construct, in order to construct on a 50-foot frontage lot, it needs a permit by this board.
Code provides him 2 or possibly more avenues to be able to construct on a lot. He chose one of those avenues in April, and we voted on that avenue, and he's choosing another avenue tonight.
And that's under appeal.
That is under appeal, and he's choosing another avenue tonight, and we will likely vote on that as well. I think one of the things I'm still struggling with, and I honestly do want to know, and I think what he was alluding to is, we still have some power to potentially address some of your concerns, other than wanting to see this lot remain vacant. I'm not sure what else you might be interested in.
I mean, nobody wants that. There's a pre-existing non-conforming structure on the site. Please, I don't think it bears any, I have no desire to revisit the rather lengthy presentation I made with your permission before us last time. You know, our belief is that, our belief, quite frankly, is that you had an obligation to rule on 40B, 40A6B, and that you didn't do so, that the present project is considerably more non-conforming than the existing structure, considerably more, and that was what we asked for and believe it should have been evaluated. I'm not here to make that argument now. That argument can be made forward, but think about what you've just done in introducing a whole new hearing. Suppose now, I don't want to feel like I'm the obstructionist here. Suppose 10 citizens decide to, or suppose I decide to appeal a decision if the decision goes in a certain direction this evening, right? It reintroduces again the legal costs, and I mean this. I guess I don't feel the need to elaborate further.
Certainly.
Mr. Brooklyn has every right to bring these concerns, even a reevaluation of this forward in the appeal process. He made a determination. Oh my gosh, I did. Now I looked at it again, and now I'm rethinking this thing. This is a seasoned developer. He didn't do that. He's looking for yet another way to drive this thing forward because he doesn't want to get stymied at this moment. I'm not here to make accusations about motive, but procedurally, it does not make sense that you can reintroduce a hearing once this board has decided. You can read your own decision that the lot was non-conforming, and you decided on certain non-conforming aspects of it. Based on your decision, we appealed to the Superior Court.
Yes, and
that's where this project now needs to be.
Yeah, the nonconformity was the setback of the house and the 50-foot frontage. And again, I don't know why he didn't approach us with this at first. He chose the right or the wrong relief, if you will, but now he's come at us with another form of relief that, as we read the bylaw, that
procedurally, I've said procedurally, it's my impression you're on thin ice having reintroduced a new hearing, but we'll let that be decided.
You absolutely have the right to that opinion and the avenues which you have to make us agree with you.
No, I'm not.
Legally,
This
that's,
is it.
I don't think anyone begrudges you
I
for
said-
that.
Yeah, and
Thank
this,
you. I said
don't
more
think
than
I
I wanted to
begrudge you for
say.
that.
yeah, and this doesn't affect the appeal, but that still moves forward on its own merits.
Well, though,
Right.
it had, in that this is still, we're still in this particular hearing process, it certainly, would not upset me if the decision of the board was to reject this petition here and bring it back to the appeal court where it belongs, where all these things would still be adjudicated. Nothing in here is outside of the parameters.
This doesn't preclude your action. It gives you other concerns maybe, and I'm not sure it's appropriate for us to comment on that. But this certainly doesn't stop anything that's
No,
currently happening in
It
the
certainly
court.
doesn't. As a matter of fact, I'm arguing before you that the fact that you've gone forward even as far as you have makes my case that you're acting in a capricious manner all the more germane. I do that, I say that with absolute respect for what you people do here, and I hope you understand that.
No, thank you. You've been incredibly civil.
Return the compliment.
I guess my concern is that, having not been present on the board
Sure.
when the other decision was made, I'm somewhat in the dark, but I'm gathering what was discussed. Were I here, I probably would have said what's non-conforming about it, but in terms of the lot itself, and obviously that might have led to some other conversation. But in that sense, we are a slightly different board because there's another member
And one less
present
member.
and one less
Sarah's
member, and we have a new member who also has opportunity to comment on this
Kevin, I was here
application.
last
You were in this one?
Yeah.
No, you were here last one, okay. But I guess I'm concerned because when we have properties that have existing dwellings on them, and those dwellings are removed, and new construction takes place, typically on a raise and reconstruction, reconstruct finding, there's, with the exception of building code and height, we have relatively limited input on what goes on the property as long as it meets those restrictions. Non-conforming structure on Cedar Point, on a non-conforming lot, can be developed to the build-out setbacks, and have been quite frequently. So if the concern is that the property, that the dwelling that's on this property is relatively small, I happen to be familiar with it because I knew Mr. Gray, and that the applicant wishes to put a larger structure there, that would be consistent with the neighborhood. There are other properties in the neighborhood of significant size. So I don't see what the, I don't see what the, I don't see what would be appealable in terms of, you alluded to that it would be more non-conforming, and I don't want to, if you feel uncomfortable talking about the case, that's fine, but building a, if the lot were empty, what could you build there? For me, that's the standard by what is conforming on the lot. I mean, something cannot become more non-conforming if it could be built by right if the property was not developed prior. I mean, anything to...
As I say, you're struggling, you weren't in the prior hearing. The only point to make is that the decision of the board was appealed, and
But the application before the board at that time was different from the one that's before us now. This is an application to find...
it's the same property, it's the same proposal. there have been no, other than a sort of reframing of
Well, I think
issue of conformity, there have been no new, there's
No,
been
the-
no new
But the
information.
relief being
The relief
is different.
is much different. That's the point we're making. This relief that they're seeking is a relief in the 610 2B that allows you to have a 50-foot lot frontage with certain requirements, and it becomes a conforming lot. Before, the relief that was seeking is because of the setbacks of
I
the existing
appreciate that, and
structure.
again, that's all embedded in the what will becomes a de novo evaluation for the Superior Court. In fact, Mr. Portland himself has identified a number of things that were embedded into the appeal that will get addressed there, and this should, by rights, be one of them.
I would just be careful that if we vote to approve this application, my interpretation is that then the building inspector would be within his rights to grant a building permit, and I'm not so sure that your current appeal would, unless at the very least be modified, would affect this application for a building permit
Well, then
once
be
this law was
very,
approved. So it's just something I want you to be aware of.
then be very
so that
careful,
we
sir.
don't
that-
wish to pull any.
Then be
the wool
very
over
careful,
this.
sir, that you're within all of the parameters of the building code as it presently exists, which is to say, the non-conforming lot with 50-foot road frontage has to have at least double the areage. And although you've heard from Mr. Borkland that he's eating away at that area, you don't have it. There's nothing that certifies that he's going to end up with 40,000 square feet. So, and you know,
Mr. Marabito
be careful.
Mr. Marabito is a registered land surveyor, and he stamped this plan indicating that there's,
And that's under appeal to DEP, as Mr. Borkland has said, and one of the issues in appeal there is whether those lines are in fact accurately drawn.
Well, also in addition, just to kind of reference, play a little devil's advocate, in addition, we also have precedence of allowing this in upwards of 50 or 60 times in the last 10 years that I've been here. You know, this procedure, then all of a sudden, an application comes through us and we don't allow it? I mean, that's the consistency that we're in a position of there. So, you know, if we were to deny this, you know, and it's something that has been set forth over a number of years, since the mid-90s, that's been allowed, then all of a sudden, you know, we change our mind. We can't always cherry pick where we vote on because we don't like it or something like that. I mean, it's kind of...
I simply want to caution that Mr. Venturi, Attorney Venturi hit the nail squarely on the head, sir. If you approve this, Mr. Borkland intends to drive straight forward tomorrow to Mr. Vogel and say, I want to build in.
Well, it takes a little longer than that, because there's procedures that need to be going
You gotta
through
do your
for the
V's and all
permit.
that, but please be cautious, because that's exactly where he wants to take this.
Yeah, and at the beginning...
And then what, and then...
At the beginning of the meeting, also, that, you know, we're asking if we chose to, you know, have town council review it again, we will do that. I don't know that we need to, but, you know, that was...
How did we get to town council reviewing it the first time?
I don't know.
Because of the appeal.
Oh, because of the appeal, and then because there's an application regarding the same
Right.
property, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that was...
If I can just add something, hopefully, there's something called a repetitive petition in the law, and if this board denied my first permit, and I changed, say, the size of the house or the location of the house, I would be able to go to the planning board, and the planning board would determine whether that was a substantial change if I came in with a new location for the house. If they made that determination, this board could actually go forward and approve the plan, even though they denied the prior one. But this is not a repetitive petition, because this board, one, didn't deny the plan, they approved the plan, but it is totally separate relief from anything that's non-conforming. So it's It's literally two different animals.
But that's what that's what I'm kind of seeing too.
Yeah, and under
Not
this
that I-
application, you could build an entirely different home than was proposed in the earlier, even though really in the earlier application, we allowed you to build any home, so.
Well, we've been working on the plan for months, so the home plan is pretty much done, and it was thousands and thousands of dollars, so I don't.
Let me ask this, if the decision under appeal were withdrawn, maybe, I don't know if there's a legal way to withdraw it, but if
Well,
it
the
disappears-
applicant could withdraw the appeal.
I'm sorry.
If you're appealing the decision of the
The first
board,
one.
Correct.
the first one, could the applicant could Mr. Bjorklund withdraw the application to this board, voiding the decision, and therefore making the appeal moot?
Yeah.
This present
The
here?
first one.
First one.
If the applicant withdrew the application.
I
don't
want
know.
to be careful that we're not giving
Yeah,
someone who's an adversary to the town and this board in litigation legal advice.
No, I'm not suggesting, I'm asking for myself,
thank you.
is that, no, I'm simply asking for myself, is can an application be withdrawn? I don't know.
Arguably, in my opinion, if Mr. Bjorklund seeks a building permit under this approval, the appeal, I'm not sure I'd pay an
It's
attorney to continue to appear on my behalf.
Correct.
He could lose for non-appearance. I'm not so sure it affects in any way a building permit granted under this application. But again, you, sir, should.
We've gone through that with my attorney,
should
so
continue
I'm
to
not
appeal
concerned
and
with that.
modify it as
Yeah.
you see fit.
Yeah.
Again, please, can I caution you, though, that if you're basing this decision on all of the parameters of what would constitute a now conforming lot, and Mr. Bjorklund himself has pointed to an area of wetland that's going to be taken away from the 44,000. You, please be cautious, because the moment that dips under 40, it's again a non-conforming lot, whatever else you decide, and
I'm comfortable that this lot has twice the required area, and you have certainly expressed that you are not, and I respect that.
I can add one more piece of information regarding the bordering vegetated wetlands, which is protected under 13140. Based on the appeal that was taken by Mr. Spellman, there has already been an on-site visit, okay? A decision hasn't been made, a final order of conditions from DEP superseding order has not been issued, but at the on-site visit, the wetland line, the bordering vegetated wetland line was walked with Greg DeCesar from DEP, Brad Holmes, my wetland scientist, Mr. Spellman, and myself. At that time, DEP did not ask to change a single flag or add a single flag to the wetland line out there. That's the only information I give you. The superseding order, I think they have about another 10 days under the law. They have 70 days, I think, to issue it, so we're getting close to that time frame. But if something happens and that wetland line were to change, Bob would tell me that the lot wouldn't conform.
Mr. Bjorklund is giving you misinformation at the moment.
Well, based on what he just submitted, I think we'd be fine conditioning our decision on this application that no information should change to stop the lot from having twice the required upland area.
I have no problem with that condition.
I think,
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that?
He was saying that he could condition our decision, if we were to go forward with it, that nothing shall change in regards to having double upland areas on the lot.
Yep.
So that those requirements would be met. So if someone comes forth with a plan stating that it doesn't, he would be not compliant with our decision.
Yeah, but how do we confirm that?
At the
You've got a
time,
plan now
at
that's-
the time of the issuance of the building permit. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, if we get a...
If it gets to the point of issuing a building permit, the appeal of issuing that permit is to you.
That's true.
Right, but we have to kind of use the information we have
Yeah,
in
exactly.
front of us. We can't
Right.
suppose that that's going to be wrong, when it's a stamped engineered plan. Any other comments? do we, you guys, that doesn't matter anyway. Let's say it doesn't matter when their appeal is going to be heard.
So,
If the appeal, I'm going to try to understand, if the appeal to our approval
The original?
is, the original approval is upheld, and the original approval is then remanded back or vacated, would there be any reason why this application could not then come before us?
It's just a timing issue.
I am by no means an expert in zoning appellate law,
I know,
but I honestly
zoning
can't-
appellate law confuses the heck out of me because I never can figure out how they're going to.
I can't think of a scenario where a court would say, unless the appellate complaint was amended to somehow add an appeal of this decision, I can't see how one would have anything to do with another. Until the appeal was amended to add, and I think even some courts might say that that would be a separate appeal entirely.
Yeah, I
Some
guess-
might not, some might allow it to be
I can see,
one
I can see
complaint.
the logic in both
Yeah,
decisions.
yeah.
As a non-attorney.
Yeah.
I can see the logic both ways.
But unless that appeal was somehow amended, I don't see how it would have any bearing whatsoever on this.
Well-
It's separate relief.
Well, part of me, they say this is, barring this, when have we ever not granted this relief?
Yeah, I just,
It's almost like, here's what you have to do. It's not like, oh, you have to, it's not like, you meet these conditions, which he has, we go through the stuff, it all complies. It's like, it's not like, oh, okay, if it all complies, then you can, it's like, the relief has to be granted. It's not that we don't, it's not what we want, or that matters. I mean, if he's met all the criteria for the relief that he's seeking, it's kind of in black and white telling us what to do. It's really not an opinion.
yeah, it's, I don't think the appeal or the prior decision has any bearing on this decision.
Yeah, I mean, if we voted not to grant this relief, was the appeal our decision to be appealed?
I don't think it does.
this board, I'm sorry,
Sort of our turn.
forgive me,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Right.
This board heard a hearing on a decision was rendered on May 11th. I can't remember when we were here.
February, it must have been February. That wasn't here. April.
One of the vacations.
You were away.
Either April
One of
or
the school
February.
vacations.
This petitioner came before this board, claimed the lot was non-conforming. You heard his whole presentation. You heard my rebuttal. Based on that, you weighed the evidence carefully. You rendered a decision. That decision says the lot is non-conforming. He came before you saying it was. You walked away at the end of the day saying it was. I appealed based on the nature of the hearing around that nonconformity issue, and I believe that I remain on good footing with that. And now, he comes back before you to say, gosh, I made a mistake, I just have to think about it. Now I'm thinking about it different, and you can turn around and say that, yeah, gee, you're right, I think about it different. Yeah, why no?
No,
That's what's-
no one's saying.
I didn't make a mistake.
He's not saying he made a mistake, and we're not saying we made a mistake. We granted relief under a section 810.2B of the code, under an application in April, and we are now granting relief under an entirely different section. This is truly, in my opinion, a situation of apples and oranges. You disagreed with our decision in April, which is your right. It sounds like maybe you disagree with our decision here, which is also your right, and there are avenues where you can try to enforce that disagreement. But these are two separate
To be
decisions.
fair, you haven't made
in our
it.
view.
To be fair, sir, you haven't made a decision
If
yet.
and once we
You're
do.
speaking on your own behalf, and I'm hoping still that reason prevails.
In that regard, it's almost 11 o'clock.
Yep.
I've heard everything I need to hear.
Any other questions? Tom, looks like we studied. Do you want to vote on this?
I'm concerned, I'm more than happy to vote on it, but having not heard the first one, I feel like I'm missing a little bit of the, I mean, I'm happy to vote on this one, but if, Tom, you're comfortable voting, it would only require a majority vote anyway.
Yeah.
So I could, if Tom weren't here and I recused myself, I could still have a.
I think you're even allowed to recuse yourself and he could just be the third vote. I don't think there's anything that stops you from doing that if that's what you want.
Yeah, the alternate becomes.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't.
It's not only in the event of non-attendance.
I'm inclined to vote for it, but I feel like I'm
You
missing.
feel like he's a better vote in
piece
this
of the
instance.
action. I mean, I just feel like I'm missing a bit of the
That
information.
makes sense. I understand.
Do we have a motion then?
Oh, first application. This is the plan on motion that the board grant a special permit on the application of Diamond Development for property of 53 Border Street in Scituate, Massachusetts. To grant a special permit under section 610.2B for the acceptance of a 50-foot frontage lot that abuts on at least one street for a distance of 50 feet, which has a width of at least 50 feet at every point between the frontage and the nearest part of the dwelling to be erected, and which contains at least twice the area of required upland in the district, with the condition that such lot shall not be further subdivided, and of course with the condition that any dwelling built thereon shall comply with all setbacks and height requirements within the district.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
And that the lot area not be less than 40,000 square feet of upland?
Yeah.
Are we gonna do that too?
Didn't I do that by saying twice the, yeah.
Point of order.
No.
Second.
All right, discussion? And then, question before we,
Perhaps you just overlooked it, the attorney, but it seems to me that your motion did not include pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A.
I'm actually not so sure that it is a 48, Section 6.
That's the petition.
Issue.
That's what's.
Is it?
That's what,
No.
that's what you're being asked to.
Yeah, we don't have to find on all of the items that are listed
So you're
there.
excluding 48 from your decision here, is that?
I'm not sure, and I think the applicant agrees with me that any relief is required under 48, Section 6.
Correct.
Often, extra areas are listed in the public hearing because it arguably would be inappropriate for us to have a hearing on those unless they were included in the public notice. We're not precluded on voting or discussing on less. We'd be precluded on voting or discussing more.
all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None?
Abstain.
Thank you.
All right.
You ready?
Who's got that one?
All right. Good night, and thank you.
I suppose I should, but I.